Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook Library, a sanctuary of stories where fan fictions come alive, where ancient legends echo from the East and Western worlds awaken with wonder. Settle in. Your journey begins now.
Reborn in Original Chapter 76. Tadia. In the Mikaelson home, the members of the Mikaelson family were all gathered in the living room as they were all stared by Tadia, who has become fully awakened. Tadia. I don't get it. I mean, Viktor killed me. He turned into this monster with hideous eyes and face and bit into my neck, draining me of my blood until my life was snuffed out of me, and the next second I'm here, alive, and you all are also here. What's happening? Viktor. Well, that's one way of describing how I killed you. It's really surprising, and as for why you are alive, let's just say I brought you back with the help of my friend. Of course, and also why we are alive. That's simple. We are immortals. We can't be killed or harmed in any way possible. Tadia. You are not humans anymore, right? Which would explain your immortality, correct? Elijah. Yes, we are no longer humans but what is called a vampire. We were made that way because of our father, who persuaded our mother to do spell to turn us after the death of Henrik. Using your blood, Elijah with the help of Viktor was telling Tadia about their situation and of course her resurrection. Tadia. But what I don't understand is why kill me when, if you wanted to trigger your curse, I mean, you could kill some random human then and you will still trigger the curse, so why me? Viktor. Well, like I said before, snuffing your life back then, it was nothing personal, just that after my father, Michael, found out that Niklaus and I are not his sons but that of the same creatures that killed Henrik, he was furious and demanded that my mother to do a spell that will suppress our werewolf genes, which would require your blood, so I couldn't take the risk and had to kill you, but I didn't know she had a stockpile of your blood somewhere. That's my bad. Viktor explained the reason why he killed her back then, which only left her even more confused because from what she was told, they could also turn someone into a vampire like them. So why didn't he turn her into one? Tadia. Then you could have turned me into one of you and your mother might not even have any use of me anymore. Viktor. You see, I never knew that was possible by that time, as we were newly turned, and it was by accident that we turned our very first vampire, Lucian. If I knew then, I would have truly turned you. That's after I drained you dry, of course. Viktor didn't even think of turning Tadia and just wanted to kill at that time, but even if he did think about it, he still would not have turned her because he would have to explain how he knew about turning someone into the same being like them, and Elijah would have been furious as he would not want that kind of life forced on her since he didn't like his monstrous nature back then either. Viktor. Now that we are on the topic of vampires and stuffs, why don't we just let the cat out of the bag? Elijah. Tadia. What are you talking about? What is he talking about, Elijah? Elijah sighed as he did not know where to begin to explain to her about her true heritage, her mother's death and her not being human anymore, or completely human. Viktor. If you can't do it, I can help you with the help of Sage, as she is the only one who can really tell her who she truly is, Tadia. And that is Freya. Be a little patient, Tadia. You will know everything. Stop asking questions. Tadia. And who are you, anyway? Finn. Okay. That's enough, Tadia. This is Freya and she is our eldest and she is easily prone to anger, so you might want to watch the way you speak with her. Finn quickly diffused the situation before it got out of hand because he could see the pissed off face of Freya. Elijah, it won't come to that. And Tadia, what you really want to know is that you are no longer human, or you are partially human and part guardian, something akin to the modern day angels like our sage here. Your mother is a guardian, Rhiannon, and your father is a human. We don't know of him. Due to your birth, your mother was temporarily stripped of her power and imprisoned while you permanently deprived of your heritage as a guardian, making you human. Now when we turned and Viktor killed you, your mother was furious, but at that couldn't interfere with our world, so she bid her time for the time when she would strike to avenge your death. After several centuries, your mother finally struck exacting her revenge, but one thing led to another and she died, and that's how we knew about your true origin. Believe me, I would have made sure she did not die, but she was so adamant to take her revenge that she even went as far as self-destructing herself to finish us off. Tadia. But that didn't work out, as you all are still alive and kicking, whereas she is dead and failed to avenge me. That's one hell of a story, so what are you going to do now? Sage. Viktor has agreed to resurrect Rhiannon and make peace with the Celestial Court, so you will get to see her again, but not anytime soon. So in the meantime, I will teach you everything about being a guardian and how our powers works. Sage answered Tadia's question when the door opened and the students came in. You have got to be kidding me, Henrik and Katarina said at the same time when they both saw Tadia. Katarina immediately transformed back to her original appearance, which made Tadia also exclaim in shock. Victor, that's why I should have done the explaining. You see, that is your doppelganger. Actually you both are a doppelganger of her, Victor said as he pointed at Amara, who also transformed back to her original appearance. Victor, Amara, there is your ancestor and you all are her doppelgangers, including our lovely Elena little Henrik is in love with. You are the first known doppelganger. Katarina here is the second and Elena the third and also the last, as we are breaking the spell that causes the doppelganger effect. Victor finished explaining to Tadia, which seemingly understood everything easily, which was a surprise to him as he thought it would be hard for her to digest the information. Henrik, so what are we going to do with her? We can't let her walk around like that. Tadia. Henrik, what are you talking about? If you think that I will change my face like these two, then you are in a one hell of a surprise, because that's not going to happen, and besides, your brother likes me with this face better, so you will have to tell her about all this or forget about it entirely, as I'm not going to change my face. Everyone was silent because Amara and Katarina has always agreed with changing their face because they were asked to, because of Elena, which should not have been so. Victor. Sigh, I guess it is time she comes to know about the world of the supernatural, so that everyone can be satisfied. Henrik, you are the one to do it, and I think you should do it tonight, Victor said, as he knew that if Elena were to find out on her own, there is going to be a crack in their relationship. Henrik, all right, I will be on my way then, Henrik said after throwing one final look at Tadia and Vamp. Speed away from the Mikaelson compound. Gilbert's home. Ring. Elena came to get the door when she heard someone ring on the doorbell and saw that it was Vicki, Matt's younger sibling. Elena. Hey, Vicki, what are you doing here? Vicki. Is Jeremy at home? I wanted to see him. When Elena heard her, she sighed because she couldn't understand why Jeremy and Vicki were in a relationship in the first place, but it wasn't in her place to say anything. Elena. Come on in, he is inside. Elena invited Vicki inside when Margaret walked out of her room. And saw her. Margaret. Whoa, if it isn't the lover girl herself, why don't you join me in the kitchen? Jeremy is currently in the shower. You could grab a bite or two before meeting up with him. Vicki. Thanks, I'm super hungry but I don't feel like eating anything right now. Elena. What is it? Is something wrong with you? Are you feeling okay? Elena immediately rushed to her side, trying to check if there is anything wrong with Vicki. Vicki. No, it is nothing, it's just that I am craving for something else, something like. Vicki, having Elena close to her, couldn't hold herself anymore as her face changed into a more hideous look before going for Elena's neck. Chapter 77. Elena finds out about Henrik. 1. Vicki. No, it is nothing, it's just that I am craving for something else, something like. Pinning Elena to a wall, Vicki went for her neck with her fangs out, wanting to tear into her neck and drain every bit of her blood. Margaret stood there stuck to the ground with her eyes closed because she was scared silly when she saw Vicki's vampire face. Whoosh! Margaret felt a good breeze enter the house from the door when she heard a thud sound. She opened her eyes to see Henrik, Elena's new boyfriend, pinned Vicki to the wall while she struggles to break free. Henrik, are you both okay? Elena, are you okay? Elena didn't even know how or what to say. She just saw Vicki, a girl she knew, hints they were a kid turning into a monstrous creature with a hideous face trying to kill her, and the next minute, her boyfriend just swoop in and save the day. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Margaret nodded her head to tell Henrik that they were okay. Henrik. Good. Elena, you must still be in shock due to everything happening this fast, but I promise I will tell you everything, but first, let me handle this. Knowing that Elena might still be in shock after coming close to death's gate, he decided to wait for a few minutes, so that she could get her bearings before he can explain everything to her. Elena. Wait, what are you going to do to her? Henrik. Kill her, of course. Elena. No, you can't do that. She is Matt's younger sister. What are you going to tell him, and how am I going to face Matt and Jeremy when they start asking questions about Vicki? Elena didn't want Henrik to just kill Vicki. She didn't even know how he could say it easily, but this isn't the time for that. Vicki's life comes first before anything else. Margaret, what do you mean by not killing her? Elena, she is a vampire, and from the looks of it, A newly turned one, and you are just going to let her live, and for God's sake, she tried to kill you, remember? Henrik turned to look at Margaret, wondering how she knew that Vicki is a vampire when he haven't said anything yet. Even Elena looked at her sister. Heck, even Vicki looked at her as she has come back to her senses while still being held down by Henrik. Seeing all the questioning look thrown at her way, Margaret raised a brow at them as if asking why they were staring at her. Margaret, if it's because I know about Vicki being a vampire, then you are not updated with the movies and stories going around in the 21st century and the myths about the supernatural. Elena just dropped the matter as everything she said made sense before she turned to Henrik. Elena, you must not kill her, and if what Margaret says is true about Vicki being a vampire, then she might be a newly turned and not in control of herself. She just needs someone to teach her how to be a vampire. Margaret, you said it yourself, she might be a newly turned. Those are the most dangerous vampires as they easily lose control of themselves, and who do you think is going to teach her how to be a vampire? Or do you know of any vampires in town that don't know of that might be able to help her? Elena didn't argue anymore with Margaret as she was right, but this is Vicki they were talking about. They can't just kill her like that. Elena, okay, let's just say that we should kill her. How are we going to kill her? Do you know of any method that might be able to kill her? Margaret, good. You are coming to reason, but I should tell you this. You should pay more attention to myths after we survive this, because since we now know of the supernatural, there is no backing out. Now, from what I have read from the myths about vampires, they have a weakness against sunlight, garlic, holy water and wood, especially wood, since a stake to the heart means death for a vampire. Elena, since we can't wait for the sun to come out and we don't have a holy water, then that leaves us with garlic and the wood. Henrik. Hey guys, hearing Henrik's voice, the two sisters finally remembered that they were not the only ones in the room. Margaret then remembered that feeling of something passing by her extremely fast and then saved Elena from Vic, and now the way Henrik pinned Vicki to the wall and did not break a sweat despite her struggling to break free from his grasps, and also asking Elena if he should kill her, makes her know that Henrik isn't human, he is a vampire or another supernatural creature. Margaret, what are you? You are not human. Are you a vampire or a werewolf? Elena. Why would you even ask such a question, Margaret? Of course, he is human. Vicki, are you blind or have you gone senile due to being close to death? Can't you see that I am at disadvantage here? Vicki voiced out, seeing as she cannot break free from Henrik despite her being a vampire. Elena, no, that can't be. He is a human. He can't be a vampire. I've seen him walk under the sun, eaten garlic, and there is no way he is a vampire. He has to be human. Margaret. Well, clearly maybe most of the myths are not reliable, or he is a werewolf or some or creature. Margaret still stands on her statement and theory as there is no way in hell Henrik is a human. Sighing, Henrik snapped Vicki's neck, dropping her body to the ground, making Elena and Margaret gasp in shock for different reasons. Elena was shocked because of the way he killed her, like he did not even give a damn about Vicki, and as if he has done this several times, while Margaret on the other hand was surprised by how he effortlessly did it, which shouldn't be so even to a new vampire. Henrik, don't worry, I didn't kill her, she is now a vampire, so she gets to enjoy the benefit of being a vampire, and I will take her away after I've done what I came here to do. Is there anybody home, or is it only just the two of you? Margaret. Just the two of us. Why do you want to kill us to hide your little secret? Henrik. Actually, I was here to tell Elena my little secret, but since you are here with her and have seen everything, I might as well fill you in, and I know Jeremy is upstairs, but don't worry, he can't hear us as he has his headset on. Margaret. So you are indeed a vampire, right? Henrik. Yes, I am a vampire. Henrik said that while looking at Elena, who was shocked at this revelation about her boyfriend. Elena, so when were you going to tell me? If Vicki hadn't attacked, would you have still told me? Henrik. Elena, believe me, I was on my way to tell you this when Vicki attacked you, and if I wasn't here, I do not know what would have happened, and I do not want to know, but you have to know this. I did not intend to hide anything from you, and I will answer any question you have. I won't hide anything. Margaret. Yeah, but that will have to wait as we have a vampire waking up. Margaret said when she saw Vicki waking up. Henrik immediately turned around and held Vicki while compelling her to go straight to the Mikaelson compound and tell them about her situation. Vicki repeated everything she was told before leaving the Gilberts' home. Margaret. Wait, are just going to set loose a very hungry vampire in the town. Henrik. No, she has been compelled to go directly to the Mikaelson compound. Margaret. Okay, but how did you do it? Can you do that? You're compelling things to both humans and vampires. Henrik just looked at Margaret before looking at Elena, waiting for her to say something. Elena. Why don't we sit down? In assuming this is going to be a long talk, the trio went to the living room and sat down before Margaret turned to look at Henrik. Henrik. Sigh, this is going to be a long talk. Are you sure you don't want to let it go for today and let's have this talk tomorrow, as it is already late and given everything that happened tonight? Margaret. No way. I will not be able to sleep tonight if you don't say anything, and besides, tomorrow is the weekend, so we don't have to go to school. We can pull an all-nighter. Elena just sighed and nodded her head, giving Henrik the go-ahead to tell them the truth about himself. Henrik. Okay, it all started right here in Mystic Falls, with a family of humans, but a very special family, as they had a mother as a witch with 2 siblings following their mother's footsteps, and they were happy with their lives until one fateful night, on the night of a full moon, where they lost one of their own, their little brother and the gem of the family, Henrik Mikaelson. Me. Chapter 78. Elena finds out about Henrik to Margaret. Wait, you died? Henrik. Yes, I died. I was mauled by a werewolf on the high of the full when I followed my brother, Niklaus, Victor's twin, to go watch them transform. Trying to protect the rest of his children, my father forced my mother to make a spell that would make the rest of my siblings faster, stronger and unkillable. My mother, after not practicing magic for a while, could not perform such a big spell, so she seek assistance from her best friend and mentor, Iana, which surprisingly is the ancestor of Bonnie, the local witch. Boom, that's what Elena had in her head. She thought the surprises would be over, but now, even her best friend is related to some ancient witch her boyfriend knew of, which would make Bonnie a Margaret. So you are saying that Bonnie might be a witch? Margaret said what Elena was thinking out loud. Henrik. She might not be a witch because she is already one, and Iana is not the only one related to Bonnie. Ketsia is also an ancestor of the Bennett witch bloodline, in fact an extremely old one, but we would get to that later. Let's focus on how I became a vampire. Elena. So you are telling me that Victor's wife is an ancestor of Bonnie and she is teaching Bonnie magic? Henrik. Yes and no. She is not personally meeting Bonnie directly, just giving some spells to Alexia and Malachi to give it to her, but that would change. So can we continue now? Margaret was feeling ecstatic learning about the supernatural that she immediately told Henrik to go ahead as soon as he asked. Henrik. Okay. After my mother told Iana about what she intended on doing, Iana refused to assist and put away the spell that my mother requested of, the spell Ketsia used in creating the first immortals. My father, not willing to back down, told my mother to do it herself, as he didn't like that Iana woman anyway. So my mother, desperate to protect children, also managed to come up with a spell on her, a rip-off from the original spell. My mother performed the spell mixing it with the blood of a doppelganger, Tadia, the first known doppelganger of the first immortal, Amara, and also my brother's lover, Elijah. That night after they buried me, my mother mixed the spell with my siblings' drinks. After they ingested it into their system, they fell asleep and my father drove his sword into their hearts, killing them, ending their human lives. Elena opened her mouth wide when she heard that. She never imagined that a father would do something like that. Elena, your father really did that? What if the spell didn't work and they died? Henrik. Then the Mikaelson lineage would end that night or not. We still had Freya then. Elena. What do you mean Freya? I thought your father killed all of your siblings. Henrik. Yeah, he did, but Freya was never with us. One of my mother's selfish desires, she gave away Freya to her sister, Dahlia, to save her own skin, and lied to my father that she died in a storm, turning my father to the monster he was, that he didn't even bat an eye when killing off his children. Margaret. Man, your family is one crazy and dysfunctional family I've ever seen. Henrik. Well, it gets better with the years. So after my killed his children, he killed himself, and after Somet and me, they came back as vampires, the very first vampires in the world. They became the world's bloodsuckers, the originals. Margaret. Wait a minute, your family is the very first vampires? Henrik. Yep. Margaret was surprised to find out that the Mikaelsons were the first vampires. She just thought that they just cast a spell to turn into one. Elena. Then what about the first true immortals you talked about? What are they? Henrik. They are just immortals, a true one at that. without any weakness. There was nothing that could kill them in this world, nothing at all. Since they were unkillable, nature had to find a balance for the immortals, so it created a doppelganger to die in their stead. The female immortal doppelgangers are Tadia, Katerina, but you know her as Catherine, and then you, Elena. You are the last doppelganger. Margaret and Elena looked at each other with their eyes and mouth wide open as they processed what Henrik just said. Margaret, wait, I have seen this Catherine. She is nothing like Elena. Elena. She changed her face because of me, right? You didn't want me to know about it, do you? Henrik nodded because honestly, he didn't want Elena to get involved this early. Margaret, then what changed your mind? Henrik. Well, let's just say, Lexi persuaded me, then Malia, and finally her father, my brother Viktor. They told me that it will cause distrust in our relationship and it will not end well if that was to happen. So I came tonight to tell you myself, but apparently, Vicki got here first. Elena. Okay, that's how your family became vampires, but I don't get how you became one yourself since you are supposed to be dead then, and what is Freya? Margaret. Wait, what about the first immortals, where are they now? And also, you said Viktor is Malia's father, right? But how's that possible, as vampires are supposed to be dead creatures and cannot procreate? Margaret wanted no more of the supernatural world that she even went as far as to jolt down the things Henrik said to put it in her diary later. Henrik, one of them is dead and the other one. Amara resumed her duty as a handmaiden to Ketsia. I can't delve too much into this matter as it is not my story to tell. Maybe Malia or Ketsia herself, or maybe Bonnie if ever she was told. Now for how Malia came to be and how I became a vampire, and lastly, about Freya, you will have to hear the rest of the story. After my siblings came back as vampires, they found out that they were a lot stronger, faster, they could hear things from a long distance and they could heal extremely fast, but with all these, they felt this terrible hunger, this thirst for blood. That's how they lived until one fateful day, the day where everything all changed, the day Niklaus had his first kill. That was the day my mother's biggest secret was revealed. It came to light that Viktor and Niklaus were not of my father but from another man, the leader and alpha of the werewolves that killed me. Margaret. Oh, I bet Daddy Original went on a killing spree. Henrik looked at this Margaret and wondered why she was so interested in this discussion, and even went as far as knowing how things may progress. Elena, why are you so interested in his story? Elena finally asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Margaret. Well, unlike you who was just another human girl, I have been doing my research and I am fascinated by the supernatural, and I knew that my life is not just to live like another human girl but something more, something grander, and now I have seen a true life vampire, and not just any vampire but an original vampire with history, and you think I would just let him go like that? Come on, Elena, I am going to squeeze out all the information that I can get from him, Margaret said with an air of pride and a smug grin on her face. Henrik. You know, you would have been dead by now if it was one of my siblings, or by my hand if I do not care for Elena, correct? Margaret became quiet after he said that, but that did not mean that she was afraid. Instead, she was less afraid of him, as he won't do anything to hurt her because of Elena. What Margaret did not know was that Henrik could kill her and make either Freya, Ketsia or Malia to resurrect her, and he will just owe them a favor. That's all, but he did not want to do that. Henrik. Furious for my mother's infidelity, my father massacred the entire werewolf pack, and Niklaus and Viktor's father, igniting the war between werewolves and vampires. Still not satisfied with that, my father still forced my mother to suppress their werewolf bloodline, but Viktor could not sit by on this one, so he got rid of one of the ingredient needed for the spell, a doppelganger, Tadia, unknown to him. My mother kept most of her blood stored away for a moment like this. Seeing as his plan failed, he decided to confront our parents on his own to save Niklaus, who was already caught and was in the process of performing the ritual. Viktor attacked and freed Niklaus. Elijah and Cole also helped, and after that, they decided to leave the settlement and flee from our parents, but they were still caught. After a few exchange, Ayana also assisted my parents as she viewed them as abomination to walk the earth, but everything they did was ineffective against my siblings, as apparently Viktor tampered with the spell, making them even monstrous. With no other option, Ayana killed my mother, which made my father kill her. With nothing left for them, my siblings left the settlement, and apparently the spell affected me also, as after they left, Freya came to the settlement as the spell also affected her, and when she came to my grave to pay her respect, Viola, I woke up from the dead and was a vampire, an original like my siblings. Henrik could not tell them that a mysterious entity resurrected him and made him like his siblings, as that would be too complicated. Margaret, incredible, that's one hell of an origin story. I can make a movie with your story and name it The Originals, and I will be filthy rich and famous. As for the reason that Viktor was able to father a child was because of his werewolf side, correct? Henrik. Yes, your knowledge of the supernatural is frightening despite not seeing one until tonight. Margaret, what can I say? I am a believer and I always do my research. Elena just sighed at her sister and decided to ask Henrik one important question. Elena, how old are you? Chapter 79. Vicki moved to Salvatore boarding house. Elena, how old are you? Margaret. Isn't it obvious? He is like 5,000 years by now. We are talking about the progenitors of vampirism here. Anything less and everything I learnt from my research are lies. Henrik laughed at how confident Margaret was when she said that and how she thinks he is that old. Margaret, huh, why are you laughing? Is it that I am not even close to your actual age? Are you like 7,000 years old? Oh my god, that would be insane, living for so long and... Henrik just sighed before he coughed, drawing their attention back to him. Henrik, I am not that old. Margaret, I am over 1,000 years old. Even the origin of the werewolves can be traced to 2,000 years ago. So whatever those research tells you about the supernatural, that's a lie. You should not let all those documentaries and folklores fool you. Most of them are even written by my siblings just for fun. I don't know how it got into the hands of most of this people. Elena, you are over 1,000 years old and you say you are not that old. How old can one be to be old? Elena didn't even bother with anything else and just took in the one that matters to her. His true age. He is a freaking 1,000 years old vampire. She is dating someone who is old enough to even make her ancestors look like kids in his eyes, and he said that he is not that old. Margaret on the other hand was having doubts on whether what she knew about the supernatural world is even true. She felt as if all her whole life was a lie. Margaret, well, I don't think I will be visiting any of those websites anymore. Now, onto my next question. Since you are the originals, the first vampires, you must have difference from normal vampires, correct? Henrik. Yeah, we are not bound to any weakness of the vampire race, which literally means we do not have any weakness and we are basically unkillable. Henrik dropped another bomb that scattered the brains of the two sisters. Margaret was the one who quickly regained herself. She didn't find it weird that they cannot be killed by the normal means, but that does not mean that there is nothing that cannot kill them. Henrik, I think that's the end of our little discussion. I will leave you guys now since your Aunt Jenna is on her way home with Andre, and before I go, let me say this, a vampire cannot go into a house unless they are invited, so anyone acting weird and waiting for you to invite them in, giving silly excuses, just know that they are vampires and don't invite them in. I will come tomorrow with Malia. She will cast a spell around the house to ward off other supernatural creatures and can only be invited in. And lastly, take this, Henrik said as his shadow came to life and a purple and yellow herbs came out and he used telekinesis to grab them. Henrik, these are vervain and wolfsbane. The vervain can be used to protect yourselves against vampires' compulsion, prevent them from drinking your blood, and same goes for the wolfsbane to the wolves. Now these are just temporary as I will bring items that you can have with you all the time, but until then, the vervain is your everyday tea, and as for the wolfsbane, you can just store it away for now as there are currently no werewolves in Mystic Falls, well except from my brother and Malia and Ketsia, but that would be ineffective against them. Okay, time to go, I will tell you more tomorrow. With that, Henrik teleported from the living room, leaving the girls stunted until they heard Jenna opening the door. Jenna, why are you girls sitting there and staring into thin air like that? Andre, who was behind Jenna, saw the vervain and wolfsbane the girls quickly as when they both came inside. Andre, I guess he told them already, but seeing as there is no tears falling down their cheeks, suppose he didn't tell them about that. Elena, we were just waiting for you as you rarely come home this lately, and given the recent animal attacks going around the town, we thought we should watch out for you, but seeing Andre behind you, I guess that's not required. Andre gave Elena thumbs up in his mind for thinking on her feet. Meanwhile, Margaret was looking at him like another experiment which didn't pass by Andre's perception. Andre, is there something on my face, miss? Margaret. Margaret, that's my name, and no, there is nothing on your face. I was just looking for what Jenna saw in you, but I think I already know the answer to that. Vampire charm. Margaret whispered the last part, but Elena, who was close to her, heard it, and Andre definitely heard her also. Jenna. Okay. Both of you go to bed. I'm back and I'm safe. So there is nothing to worry about. Jenna chased the two girls away as she was too embarrassed as it is right now. Before Margaret could make any of her jokes again, Elena dragged her away, giving Jenna and Andre some space. Jenna. I'm sorry you had to see that. Andre. There is nothing to be sorry about, Jenna. Instead, we should make best use of the time we've got. Love. Jenna smiled as she hugged Andre and pulled him into a deep kiss. Mikaelson compound. Vicki was surrounded by the Creed members as the original siblings and others left her to them. Kai. Say, what should we do with this vampire? Katerina. I say we kill her. She will just cause troubles if left to run around. Vicki almost jumped on her feet and tried to run away, but she did not think about it twice, as that would truly lead her to her death. Lexi. Come on, Kat, that's just too harsh, don't you think? We should be helping her come to terms with her newfound powers and get used to the changes of being a vampire, not to scare her. Damon. If you don't know, this baby vamp is now our charge, and I don't do babysitting jobs, not since Malia there, and I swore to myself that'll will be the last. Kai. Let's put it to a vote. If you think we should end her, hands up. Katerina. Damon and Kai raised their hands as they feel keeping Vicki around as a burden. Malia. We are not killing her, and she can take care of herself, so she won't be a burden to you, and as for her being a new vampire, we can just let Lexi do it. She can teach her on her own, so that's not a problem. Malia said her piece and the others could do nothing but agree with her. Vicki sighed in relief as she has just averted a dangerous fate. She immediately thanked Malia in her heart. Damon. But where is she going to stay? I doubt Daddy Creed would let her stay here. Malia. That's why we have the Salvatore boarding house. Damon. No way. We can't have a baby vamp stay there. Zach and his family lives there, and I won't let her go there when she haven't learned how to control her urges. Lexi. That's not a problem. I can be with her until she can control herself, and after that she can return to her home. Damon. Okay, but any scratch on anyone living there, I will rip her heart out. Damon gave his final threat before he and Katerina left. Lexi took Vicki and they made their way to the Salvatore boarding house. Malia. Let's see how things will turn out to be from here on. Chapter 80. Meeting with the Bennett Gilberts home. Malia. Okay, that will do. Also, Uncle, you should find someone else to this next time, someone like Malachi, cause you know I am not a very big fan of spell casting. Henrik. Come on, Malia, can't you just do these little things for your favorite uncle? Malia. You are not my favorite uncle, and I don't do favorites. Malia just finished casting a spell to protect the Gilberts from the supernatural creatures. They can invite anyone they like and also expel anyone who tried to hurt them after they were invited in, which would lead to the person suffocating until they leave the house. Malia. Since I did this to affect all supernatural species, then you will have to invite Bonnie in, and also Tyler. Even if he is not a full-fledged werewolf, he is still a werewolf. Elena. What did you just say? Tyler is a werewolf. Malia. Didn't he tell you everything last night? Margaret. Obviously no, he just told us about how he and his family became a vampire and their journey at the beginning. Malia. That's convenient. Well, the answer to your question is yes and no. Tyler is an untriggered werewolf. He must kill someone in order to trigger his werewolf gene, and that's when he will become a full-fledged werewolf. Margaret. Whoa, that's awesome, but why does he have to kill someone in order to become a werewolf? Malia. Apparently is a kind of curse imposed on them, and don't ask me the details. See, even I don't know the answer to that. Malia said as even if she knew, her father knew, the rest of the Mikaelson do not know about it, as they don't even bother to know about it. Margaret. I wonder what they did to be cursed. Well, that's out of the way. So you are a witch, vampire and a werewolf, the first of your kind, correct? Malia. Who said I am the first? Margaret. What, is there someone else? Wait a minute, your father, he is the first. Margaret was shocked to find out that Malia was not the first witch, vampire, werewolf creature to grace the world. Rather, it was her father. Malia didn't answer her as she saw someone not too far from the Gilberts' home coming out of their house. That person was Daphne, who was on her way to work, but what Malia do not get was that she was different today, as if she was a new person. Before Malia could figure out what it was, Margaret tapped her on the shoulder. Malia, now what it that you want? Margaret. Just wanted to tell you that Elena asked if you could join us for breakfast. Malia. Sigh, I'm coming, Malia said before looking at where Daphne was and saw that she was gone. After not seeing who she was looking for, Malia just went inside to join the others. Elsewhere in the middle of a forest, a man woke up disoriented and confused as he did not know how he got here and where he even was. He saw a blood bag close to him and he felt this terrifying urge to grab it, drink from it. He didn't understand what was going on, but he tried to control his urges, but that was a vile attempt as he did not even know when he grabbed it and started drinking the blood. He lost himself completely to the uncanny taste of the blood and he didn't stop until he drank every bit of blood from the blood bag. After he was done, that's when he realized the monstrous action he just committed. He drank and enjoyed blood, which is something only a creature he knows specializes in: vampires, the bloodsuckers and the creatures of the night. He has become something that he was taught to hate, something he has been trying to get rid of from his town when he noticed that they are back. How did this happen to me? No, someone must have done this to me, and when I have out who did this, I will drive a stake through their heart and snap. Sigh. You talk too much, I have to get you out of here before those vampires arrive. I can't let you die just yet, you are a valuable asset to me. A woman vamp. Speed and appeared behind the newly turned vampire and snapped his neck as she sensed the presence of two of the vampires foiling her plan on this little town. She carried the man and vamp Speed out of there and took him to a safe place to lay low for the time being. Several minutes after the woman left, two more men appeared on the scene and looked around. They are Victor and Elijah. They were just passing through in the area when they caught the fresh scent of a blood, so they decided to check it out. Victor, I know who was here. I caught his scent during the Founders Ball. He is Logan Fell, the news reporter. I think someone I'd going around turning vampires. Elijah. Exactly my thought, brother. Whoever this person is, we have to stop them or else this town would reek of vampires, which would not bound well. Elijah said as he looked around the scene and gathered everything together before setting it ablaze with wind and fire. Victor, there was someone else here. I assume that is the vampire we are looking for. Elijah, you caught the scent. Anyone familiar? Victor. No, but since I caught the scent, there is no way I would miss our vampire. Elijah. What about this Logan person? Should we kill him or give him a chance like that Vicki girl? Victor. Nah, that guy is a total asshole, but I have something in store for him. He will not know what he is walking into. Victor thought of how Logan was going to die very soon and just smiled. Victor. Since there is nothing here for us to do, let's just go home. Elijah nodded, and with that, they vamp speed away from the scene. Elsewhere, how may I help you? A middle-aged woman with almond brown eyes, cocoa brown skin, and curly long hair said to the woman in front of her house. She is Shelia Bennett, the grandmother of Bonnie Bennett, a powerful witch in her prime. Bonnie, who was inside, also went out to see who the woman is. When she came out, she was who the woman is, and it turned out to be Ketsia, the wife of her teacher. Bonnie. Hello, Mrs. Mikaelson. Ketsia. You must be Bonnie's. I've heard a lot about you from Lexi, and I have to say, you have so much potential than any of your ancestors except from me, of course. So, I hear you wanted to meet me, my descendant. Chapter 81. Logan's death. Gilbert's home. A car drove and parked at the front of the Gilbert's home, and someone came out of the car and hasteningly ran to the house after closing her car door. When she got to the door, she and rung the doorbell. It didn't take long before Elena came to open the door and saw that it was her best friend, Bonnie, at the door. Bonnie didn't even wait for Elena to say anything and just tried to go inside, only to find out that she was unable to, which surprised her greatly as she felt a magic energy stopping her from going inside. Bonnie looked at Elena wanting an explanation. Elena, come in first, I will explain it inside. Bonnie, I blocked by a spell someone made on your house, making me unable to get in. So I don't know. Bonnie stopped speaking as this time when she tried to go inside, and she easily passed through the door without any interference. Elena smiled when she saw the surprised look on Bonnie's face. Elena, wonderful, right? Bonnie, I don't know how you did this or who did it for you, but I will get my answers later, but you won't believe what happened today, Bonnie said as she made her way to the living room where she saw Margaret sitting down and playing with her phone. Bonnie, one of the craziest things happened today. Do you know Ketsia, the wife of Mr. Victor? Elena. Yeah, everyone knows her. She is like the Kardashian of Mystic Falls. So, what about her? Bonnie. She came to Gramps' house earlier today and dropped the most absurd revelation of the year. Margaret, who heard that, dropped what she was doing with her phone and listened to what Bonnie had to say, even if she had an idea of what was going on. Bonnie raised a brow at the way Margaret reacted and found it weird. Bonnie, anyway, you know how I keep telling you that Gramps says we are descended from an old line of witches from Salem. The truth is we are actually witches. Here, let me show you an example, Bonnie said as she did a simple levitation spell on Margaret's phone, who did not take it lightly, as she believed that Bonnie might unintentionally drop it and her phone would get ruined in the process, as she was still an amateur witch. Margaret. Okay, drop it now, we've seen what you can do. Bonnie was surprised to find out that Elena and Margaret was not surprised by her display of magic, instead that just took it like it is normal for her to do so. Bonnie, what did I miss? Elena. I will tell you later, but just continue with what YPI were saying. Bonnie looked at Elena before looking at Margaret, and that's how she looked at the two of them back and forth before she gave up and sighed. Bonnie. Well, so, recently, Lexi has been giving me spells. Says it's from an anonymous source, but when earlier today, I found out who it was that was giving her the spells, and it turns out to be Mrs. Ketsia, and craziest thing of them all is that she is my ancestor from a very long time ago. She even said that I have a potential to be a very powerful witch, but I can only reach that potential if I study under her, and she also said that she wished her daughter could be more like me, inclined to learn magic, which is weird given that nobody knew she had one. And lastly, I now have an exclusive invitation to the Mikaelson compound, Bonnie said, expecting to see if there would be a change in their facial expression, but all she got was the same stare. Bonnie. Okay, this is freaking me out, what's going on with the both of you? Margaret. We've been compelled to not show any reaction to whatever you said, Margaret said with an emotionless eyes, making Bonnie to freak out, which made Ilna and Margaret to burst out laughing. Margaret. God, you should see the look on your face, it was uncanny. Bonnie. Okay, seriously, what's going on here? What are you not telling me? First, it was the magic barrier on your house, and now, you all act like I haven't just dropped an astonishing secret on you. What is it that you are not telling me, Elena? Elena stopped laughing and just smiled at Bonnie before she sighed and explained everything to her. After digesting everything, Bonnie and Elena had a few talks before Bonnie decided to leave and processed everything she found out today. Margaret. Hey, I'm going to call it a night. I'm too tired with everything that happened today, and also before I forget, Jeremy has been looking for the lover girl. So I don't know if you could tell Henrik to let her come out and meet up with him, or they should compel him to forget about that Vicki girl. Honestly, I prefer the latter, as I don't really like her that much. Jeremy could do better. No offense, Margaret said as she walked to her room and decided to call it a quit for the day. Elena sighed as she also made her way to her room and think of what to do with Vicki. Later that night, Jenna came home late and decided to do some few things before calling it day when she heard the doorbell ringing. She went to get the door only to see the person she least expected to see, Logan Fell. Jenna, what are you doing here? I thought you would be burying yourself in your work or some other women. Logan, is that how low I have fallen in your eyes, dear Jenna? I am not the bad person, Jenna, can't you see that I am trying to make amends for my mistakes? I can explain if you just invite me inside and I will tell you everything that happened that day. Jenna, I'm not gonna invite you inside. Forget it. Logan. Come on, Jenna, it's me, Jenna. The answer is no. Before Logan could say anything anymore, Jenna slammed the door on his face, making Logan frustrated, and walked out of the Gilberts' home, where he saw a man putting away a waste in the trash can. He walked towards the man only to stop when he saw a woman jogging towards his direction. The woman is Daphne, who would meet her unfortunate end tonight at the hands of Logan, or should have. She ran past him as he kept staring at her, which drew her attention to him. She stopped and walked back to him as she recognized him from the news. Daphne, you're that guy from the news, Logan Fell. I watch you every night. Well, I used to. I mean, you've been missing from my TV, Logan. I took some time off, Daphne, I noticed. I'm Daphne, Daphne said as she extended her hand for a handshake with Logan, who shook her back. Logan. Hey, you know something, Daphne? Daphne. No, what? Logan looked at her before his vampire true face appeared and tried to feed on Daphne. Daphne, expecting something like that since she has figured out that Logan is not a human, punched him in his gut, which sent him flying and crashing into the nearest car. Logan was wide-eyed when he saw how Daphne effortlessly punched him, which sent him flying. Daphne, I can never get used to this, but I can meet him after today, Daphne said as her eyes turned into a darker shade of red as she stared at Logan, who looked at her with terror in his eyes. Daphne, you were the one who asked for these, blame your bad luck for meeting me, and thank you because after this, I can get to meet him. Daphne extended her hands as claws came out of her fingers, which she used to rip the life right out of Logan. Chapter 82. Alaric Saltman Mikaelson Compound. Malia, you turned her into a werewolf. Why did you do that? Victor. Young lady, don't you know how to knock? Victor was busy going through some files when Malia barged inside, looking a little furious after she found out that Daphne has become a werewolf when she went to check up on her after hearing from her uncle Elijah that Logan has become a vampire. Malia, I'm sorry, I was just a little agitated with after I found out Daphne is now a werewolf, but you should have told me before turning her, you know she was my charge. Victor, are you turning into the TVD version of Scott? Are you saying you did not have any plan to turn anytime soon? If so, I can just turn her back into human, no big deal there. Malia, no way, you can't do that, you have already given her a taste of power and you are just going to strip it away from her. Come Dad. Victor, I'm just kidding, but you must know you can't always protect her yourself. I know that Carol and Daphne reminds you of the TW world, but you also have to know that Daphne must die one way or another, even if you prevented her from dying from Logan. This is the TVD too, where nature is a menace, but we have opposed it since the time I came to this world, so in order to oppose it once again, I had to turn her, because if she was still human, she might even die in her sleeps after you saved her. Victor explained why he turned Daphne into a werewolf instead of allowing Malia to save her. Malia sighed once again after she understood why her father did what he did. He was just trying to make sure Daphne survive in this world. Malia, then what about Carol Lockwood? She is going to die also, so what are you going to do about her? Victor. Well, the main factor of her death is Niklaus, and we know the current Niklaus isn't Klaus, so we have nothing to worry about there. Malia. Okay, I'm sorry for barging in like that. Victor. No problem, you can leave now. Alaric will be arriving in Mystic Falls tomorrow and I have a lot of things to do before I hand over to him. Malia. Speaking of Alaric, how do you think things will play out? With the all Isabel things and all that, because our current world is vastly different from the TV series and also from the books you told me about, Malia said, which made Victor go into thinking as that another issue he had not thought about. Victor. Well, we will deal with that when he comes, and if he is still here looking for what happened to his wife like the show, then I think we will be having some friends and tomb vampires to take care of, Victor said, as with the recent vampires coming into town and Vicki and Logan getting turned, it all fit with the beginning of the TV series. Victor, and in the meantime, keeping her on Anna, if what I think is correct, then she should also be coming into town. Malia nodded before walking out of the room, leaving Victor to his work. The next day, Mystic Falls High School. Good morning everyone. A man about 6'2" in height, with an athletic build. A handsome man with short, brown hair that is gelled on the top and has blue eyes walked into the class and said, "Alrighty, let's see," he said as he took a chalk and started writing something on the chalkboard. Malia, who was among the student in the class alongside Henrik, Elena, Bonnie and the rest of the Creed members, observed something to be wrong with Bonnie as she seems to be suffering from sleepless night. She remembered that this was the period that she was disturbed by the ghost of Emily, who wanted to destroy the only chance of the tomb vampires ever getting out of the tomb. But all these shouldn't be possible, as her father made sure that vampires and other supernatural creatures except from the Bennett and the Lockwood families remained in Mystic Falls. Unless, after they left and peace returned to Mystic Falls, another set of vampires came and tried to terrorize the town and they were locked in the tomb just like the series. She returned her focus on the board when she noticed that the man was done with what he was doing. Alaric Saltzman. It's a mouthful, I know. It doesn't exactly roll of the tongue. Saltzman is of a German origins. My family immigrated here in 1755 to Texas. I, however, was born and raised in Boston. Now, the name Alaric belongs to a very dead great-grandfather I will never be able to thank enough. You'll probably wanna pronounce it Alaric, but it's Alaric, okay. So you can call me Rick. I'm your new history teacher. After the introduction, Alaric continued with the class proper. After teaching for a few minutes, the bell rang signaling for the end of the class. Alaric, well, that's it for today. We will continue in our next class, Alaric said as he gathered his things and left, going off to have some fresh air before his next class. After Alaric left, Malia immediately walked up to Bonnie and held her hand, dragging her out of the class, with Elena following behind as she has seen the state Bonnie was during the history class. Bonnie, what are you doing dragging me through the hall like that? Bonnie said as they arrived at a secluded area from the watchful eyes of the students. Malia, there is something wrong with you, so spill before I force it out of you. Elena. Bonnie, she is right, I can also see it in your eyes, it seems like you are not getting a good night's sleep anymore. Come on, tell us what's wrong. Elena persuaded her friend to tell them what was bothering her to make her lose her sleeps, and with Malia here, who is also an old witch whatever she is, AHW can help. Bonnie, I don't know, I just keep getting visions of a woman who talks some weird things I don't understand, and it keeps happening every night, and any time I want to close my eyes it's as if I'm being haunted by her. My Gramps says that it is my ancestor, Emily, trying to communicate with me, and I should not push her away. I don't know what to do anymore, and I am all new to all these, and I am already being haunted by a dead ancestor. Malia, hearing, just sighed as what her father and her thought about was actually true, and indeed there might be some tomb vampires trapped in that old church building. Malia, well, I would have loved to help you, but I don't like those kind of spells as it makes me chant some nonsense words, so I will have Malachi help you with it. Bonnie, thanks, and also, it all started when I got this necklace, maybe it will help. Malia, that's Emily's, she is really the one tormenting you. Chapter 83, The Tomb Vampires, what did you just say? A furious Malia with her blazing red eyes held Elena to a halt and yelled at her after finding out what happened earlier. Elena panicked when she saw the eyes of Malia. This was the first time she had seen her true eyes, and it is very scary, and those eyes were looking directly into hers. She coughed and cleared her throat. We were just trying to reach out to Emily to see what she wanted, but things didn't go as planned, and she said, but got interrupted halfway by Malia, who released her from the chokehold. And now, Bonnie is missing and you have no idea where she is. Didn't I tell you idiots that I would take care of it, and now you went ahead and do things your way, said Malia, who was so furious that she could even kill Elena right now if not that Henrik was in a relationship with her. Elena dusted herself before going to look for a seat to sit down. We wanted to, believe me, but Bonnie said that she got held by one guy today asking for the necklace, that it belonged to him, but she refused, and he tried to grab it but got his hands burnt, and not wanting to let Bonnie out of his sight until he had the necklace, he tried to take Bonnie with him, but she managed to get away by frying his brains. She was so afraid and even went as far as to throw the necklace away, as she did not want anything to do with it again, but we don't know how, but the necklace still found its way back to her back. Caroline was also here, and Bonnie had to fill her in on the whole details about the necklace, and Caroline, being Caroline, decided that we should summon Emily and ask her what she wanted, but that's where things went wrong. Elena explained everything that transpired to Malia. Malia frowned when she heard that someone was harassing Bonnie, but now is not the time to think about it, because if everything was going according to the series despite their interference, then Bonnie is in danger. You stay here, I will go look for her, said Malia as she vamped speed before Elena could even utter a word. Seeing as Malia left without even giving her a chance to join, she called Henrik. The old church, a circle of fire surround Bonnie, who was chanting a smile in the midst of the fire with an angry man staring daggers at her. Emily, I should have killed you back then, you were my biggest mistake, and I swear after tonight, I will hunt every one of your descendants to the ends of the earth, starting with your host here. The man shouted at her before falling to the ground screaming. Bonnie, or Emily, who was currently occupying her body, stretched her hands at the man, making him scream. I'm afraid I can't let you do that. Thanks to our ancestor, Bonnie is strong enough for me to use and kill you, she said while tightening her hands into fist as the man began screaming loudly. After a while, the necklace Bonnie had been trying to get rid of flew into the air and burst into flames, destroying every last shred of hope the man ever had to getting back his family. Rage, anger, fury, hatred, different kinds of emotions flashed in his eyes. I will kill you, Emily, the man said as he vamped speed to Emily but got pushed back instead. He quickly got up in his feet and tried to rush at her once again, but someone got to him before he could get to Emily. A hooded woman appeared behind him and snapped his neck while saying something and taking him away from the place. Emily collapsed on the ground, tired from the series of events when she sensed someone with the Bennett bloodline coming towards her, a passive kind of spell she created and learnt during her era to help her bloodline. It is time to go back to the other side, Emily. Emily looked up and saw the face of the little child who has now grown up, a child she never thought of ever seeing, Mikaelson. Emily smiled bitterly when she thought of the sweet little child she thought died on that fateful night, the child who made her go this far as to even cheating death on fewer occasions and deeding herself to stop whatever or whoever that caused that massacre that night in their town, as she never want the same thing to happen to another innocent child. Jonathan called it the beast and she believed it to be a supernatural creature, so when a new set of vampires came into town, she made sure that they were settled in and came up with a plan to seal them, because she could not just chase them out of Mystic Falls, as they would still go to another town and wreak havoc, and she could not take on so many vampires on her own, so the best she could do was seal them in Mystic Falls with the help of the council. But now, she could see someone with the face she would have had when she grew up. She even thought if she was a doppelganger just like Elena. Before she could say anything to her, she lost consciousness as she could feel Bonnie clawing her way back. Seeing the unconscious Bonnie, Malia picked her up and took her to her gramps for the time being. Few hours later, this is where it all happened, just like in the show. Father, Victor and Malia arrived on the scene as they tried to get some clues on what happened here. Victor looked at the place where the hooded woman took the man away from. I caught this exact same scent the other day, but there is a second one and it seems like they were in pain. I believe one of them is Anna, and since Vicki isn't dead, it might be difficult for her to approach Jeremy, as he is the key for her to get what she wants, so you will have to compel Vicki to break up with Jeremy, you understand? Said Victor to Malia. Malia looked at the place, trying to imprint the scent into her. Yes, father. So what are we going to do with the tomb vampires? She asked. Victor looked below him and smiled. We will let everything play out just like the show. I also like to see how things will turn out. Chapter 84, Crying Jeremy. Hey, be a man. There are other girls out there who will be dying to get to know you, not some drug addict slutty bitch. Margaret yelled at Jeremy, who was sad that Vicki broke up with him, and she didn't even say why. Just that she is trying to move on with her life and do not want anything to hold her back. So he was here crying while Elena, Margaret and Jenna tried to help him get over his first breakup. Hey, young lady, watch your language. That's not how to speak, said Jenna as she warned Margaret before going back to calming Jeremy. Getting tired of watching her cousin being a crybaby, Margaret stormed out as she did not want to have any of it anymore. Elena looked at the back of Margaret and sighed. Hey, can you? She asked, pointing at Jeremy before pointing at the place where Margaret walked to. I'ma go check on her and see if she is okay. Jenna nodded. Sure, you can go. I can handle one sad boy. After all, this isn't the first breakup I've dealt with, said Jenna while smiling. After getting the confirmation from Jenna, Elena followed Margaret and saw her sitting outside looking at the full moon in the sky. She sat beside her. Hey, about Jeremy, I was thinking of having Henrik come over and make him forget about Vicki, that way he will easily move on with his life, she said without taking her eyes off the moon. Sure, do your thing. I never liked that Vicki girl anyway. She is a drug addict, and to top it all up, a newly turned vampire. Hell, she is a ticking time bomb. Good thing she decided to end things herself, because I would have driven a wooden stake through her heart, Margaret said while illustrating how she would kill Vicki if she hadn't left Jeremy on her own. Elena just rolled her eyes and called Henrik to come over. A few minutes later Henrik appeared in front of the Gilberts' home and saw Margaret and Elena stargazing and seemed to be so engrossed in it that they did not notice his presence. You should always be on alert, especially in a town filled with different supernatural creatures. You don't want to be their next victims, do you? Hearing the voice of Henrik, the two sisters quickly woke up to reality. Elena immediately went to hug him and kiss him on his lips, irritating the living hell out of Margaret. You two should go get a room, she said before standing up. Elena smiled as she ignored Margaret. If the supernatural creatures you speak of dare to place me as their next target, then need I remain you that I have a 1,000-year-old original vampire here to kick their asses, she said before planting another kiss on his lips. Oh, I like that confidence, But you shouldn't always rely on that 1,000-year-old original vampire, as he might not be available all the time. So that's why he will be leaving you in the care of the best fighter he knows, his sister, Freya. She will teach and give you all the things you need to know in order to protect yourself," Henrik said while returning the kiss. The reason why he wanted Elena to know how to defend herself is so that she might be able to defend herself when he is never around in case something were to happen to her, and who is the best person to teach her that other than Freya, who has been honing her fighting skills over the years and creating different techniques and items to aid her so as to never be in a disadvantage whenever her magic fails her, which she always says is unlikely going to happen. "So what is it that made you call me this late? I doubt that you miss me that much to call me back since we just saw each other not too long ago," Henrik asked, as it hasn't been too long since he left the Gilberts' home. Hearing Henrik, Elena pretended to be annoyed. "What do you mean I can't miss you that much? You have to know that the moment you left, I started missing you," she said while pouting. Henrik looked at her until she eventually stopped acting and just smiled. "Hey, I do actually miss you, but that's not why I called you. You see, ever since Vicki became a vampire, I was thinking that she isn't right for Jeremy but a danger to him, and I don't want him to have anything to do with all this, and after what happened to Bonnie earlier today, it is best he stay away from any of this." But surprisingly, Vicki was actually the one to break up with him on her own, to which I am glad, but that has left Jeremy sad and crying ever since she left, so I don't know if you could compel him to forget about Vicki and move on with his life, she said, waiting for his answer. Getting the gist of everything, Henrik believed something was up, as he did not expect Vicki to break up with Jeremy, not especially she became a vampire, which would have magnified her emotions. The way she would not leave Jeremy, the same could be said for Tyler. That's why he wanted to compel her to give up on her toxic relationships and pick one of the boys, but seems like someone beat him to it and even made her break up with Jeremy instead. But what he could not understand was why they would do something like that. None of the people who could compel vampires have anything to do with Vicki, and even Lexi is just a teacher to her and have no business with her personal life, but now is not the time to be playing detective. He is crying. What is he? A 10-year-old whose toy was taken away from. Sigh. I guess I will have to teach him some things one if this days. Led me to his room. Elena laughed when she saw how serious Henrik was when he said that. He had that aura of a big brother trying to teach his younger siblings the way of life. Without further ado, Elena led Henrik to Jeremy's room, where Jenna and Margaret could be seen talking back and forth. "Thank God you are here, Henrik. Can you please talk some sense into Jeremy?" "Thank you," said Jenna, who immediately ran out of the room, leaving Jeremy, Henrik and the two sisters. Henrik then went on to do his things, compelling Jeremy to forget he had any feelings for Vicki, and they had nothing going on between them. Anything he ever felt for her were just a fleeting passion common for his age. After he did that, Jeremy finally had peace and slept off like nothing even happened. "Wow, that was the second time I've seen you do something like that, and I still can't get enough of it," said Margaret, who was so excited after seeing Henrik compelling someone. Elena walked Henrik to the door with their hands held together. "You know what? Why don't you spend the night here, since it is already late and there are very terrifying creatures out there, and I'm afraid you will end up as their dinner," Elena said. Henrik didn't reply and just carried her and Vamp speed to her room and closed it. Chapter 85. Daphne Mystic Grills. "Nice ring you got there, man. How did you get that?" Victor said to a man sitting at the bar counter having a drink while minding his own business. My wife gave it to me." "You are Victor, right? The former history teacher," the man replied while looking at the ring his late wife gave to him before she died. "Yeah, and you must be Alaric. I've heard about you. You are the one who took my place as a history teacher," said Victor as he also ordered a drink for himself. Alaric smiled when he heard that. "But you became the maths teacher and the coach of the sports team. I find that really cool," he said as he took a sip of his drink. "I hope you enjoy your stay here. Mystic Falls have a lot to offer," said Victor before turning around and left. Alaric looked at Victor for a brief moment before going back to his drink. Victor, on the other hand, was having a headache right now. With Alaric in town and having the Gilbert ring, that means Isabel is alive, but now what would be her relationship with Elena and the rest of them? It wouldn't be a surprise that Damon was still the one who might turn Isabel into a vampire, but what led to her doing that, and what would her relationship be with Elena and Margaret? "Hey, I'm here." Victor was brought out of his thought by Daphne, who just walked into the Mystic Grills, the place where they are supposed to meet. "You are on time, Daphne. said Victor, who called Matt over to give her a drink. Of course, I would be. This is an important matter and I am not going to just laze around about it. So without any further delay, why did you do that to me? Why did you turn me into a werewolf? Said Daphne, whispering in a low voice that Victor can catch. Victor simply smiled as he looked at her. He wanted to use this line ever since he learned he could turn someone into a werewolf. The bite is a gift, he said, which made Daphne just looked at him with a raised brow, making Victor laugh. I'm sorry, just wanted to say that for a long time. Actually, the reason I turned you was that he were supposed to die that night and not the other way round. Logan Fell was supposed to drain every single drop of blood he could get from you, leaving you to die, but out of the goodness of my heart, I gave you the bite to have a fighting chance. Here's your drink, Mr. Victor, Matt said as he brought the drink meant for Daphne. Thank you, Matt, right? Victor said while passing the drink to Daphne. Yes sir, said Matt. You should take this, you deserve it. Victor gave Matt a large tip as he really admired his character in the series, the only human in the Mystic Falls gang and also the blood bag for his vampire friends who also outlived them all. Matt thanked him and wanted to reject it, but Victor didn't give him the chance and chased him away. You mean, I was going to die that night? Daphne asked, to which Victor nodded. If that was the case, then how did you know about that? Victor sighed as he was now getting tired of this questionings as if he was being investigated. Let's just say that, I can the future, and since I suppose you don't have any other question, then I will have to take my leave, and if you do have any question, you can ask Malia, she would gladly tell you whatever you need. With that, Victor chugged his drink and left the grill, but not without seeing how Alaric looked at Andre, who just walked in a while ago with Jenna. Andre might have been the one who turned Isabel, given by the way he looks at him. It's the same look he gave to Damon, said Victor in his head as he walked to his car and drove off. Daphne also drank her drink and stood up and looked at Andre, who smelled the same way Logan did, which tells her that he is a vampire, but he appears to be very strong, as Logan did not give her that dangerous vibe like the way Andre did. And to her surprise, Andre also looked at her and smiled. She smiled back and immediately walked out of the grill to get to the hospital, her workplace. Who's that? Asked Jenna, who saw Andre smiled at Daphne. Andre turned to look at Jenna. I don't know, maybe a friend of Victor, he said, because he just saw her with Victor, and from the looks of it, she might be a supernatural creature, but he does not know which one. Jenna didn't dwell on it anymore and just went to the bar with Andre and sat close to Alaric, who was looking at Andre secretly. Mikaelson compound. This is going to be fun. A house filled with different supernatural beings. This is going to be exciting, said Margaret, who was happy as he has the opportunity to visit the Mikaelsons after she knew about their secrets. She is here with Elena and Bonnie, who wanted to had class with Ketsia on magic, and she is taking it seriously after the recent event of her deceased ancestor, Emily, possessing her and leaving her for dead if not for Malia being there to save her. Malia sighed as she still did not understand why Margaret followed them here. Will someone please shut her up? She said as she released her claw on Margaret's face. Okay, I will keep my mouth shut, but don't gut me, I still have a lot to live for before I will be ready for death, Margaret said, but her mind was on Malia's claws, which she finds fascinating. Bonnie and Elena laughed, which further irritated Malia as she put her claws back. Hey, so your mother is my ancestor, so what does that make you? Bonnie asked Malia, who raised a brow at her for the sudden question. I think, still your ancestor, she said as she did not know the answer to that, but she believed she was still Bonnie's ancestor. I don't think that is right. You are like her very great-grand aunt, since your sister or brother is the one that started the Bennett family legacy, Margaret, the intellectual one said. Malia looked at her and smiled. And nobody asked for your opinion, she said. Just saying, Margaret said as she moved back from Malia. Speaking of sister or brother, where are they? Elena asked about the Malia's sibling, thinking that they might also be the child of Victor. Don't know, don't care, all I know is that they are long dead even before my father was even born, Malia said. Bonnie, Margaret and Elena were shocked as they realized that Ketsia is that old. Before they could say anything any further, they entered the house only to see Amara coming down from her room. You've got to be kidding me. Chapter 86 put the title after reading. You've got to be kidding me, said Margaret when she saw an exact replica of Elena coming. Hi, you must be Elena, I've heard a lot about you, It will be fun to introduce you to the rest of the doppelganger gang. Oh, I'm Amara by the way, the original, said Amara, who introduced herself to Elena specifically. Then she turned to Bonnie. Ketsia said you should meet her upstairs. That's where your magic class will be held, she said before leading Elena and Margaret the dining to serve them something. Margaret on the other hand still couldn't process the entire scene. She just saw the exact same face she sees every day of her life on someone else, and it isn't just a lookalike but the exact face. How is this possible? Is there a doppelganger of me somewhere else? This is freaking unbelievable, said Margaret, which only made Amara smile. There might be a doppelganger of you somewhere in the multiverse, love, but you won't be able to know that given we can't traverse the multiverse. The group arrived to see Viktor drinking blood from a blood bag in the dining room. Wait, there are also multiverses. That's unbelievable, said Margaret, who didn't even register who was talking or what he was doing as soon as she heard the word multiverse. Malia sighed as she hit Margaret's head. Hey, get a hold of yourself. There is no multiverse and there is no doppelganger of you anywhere, said Malia as she gave Viktor a side eye. Viktor simply smiled and offered Malia a blood bag, to which she grabbed and started drinking from it. Elena looked at her and back at Viktor, who saw her. What? Didn't Henrik fill you up on what we are? If so, then I will say it. We are vampires, love, and we feed from blood to survive, so don't be surprised when you see us drinking blood, said Viktor. I know, it's just that I thought you would be feeding directly from us humans just like the shows and the books about vampires, said Elena as she came back senses. Viktor laughed out loud. Come on, love. We are vampires, not animals. We evolve with time. You should have seen us back in the days. Humans were our daily breakfast, said Viktor. Here, said Amara as she offered Elena and Margaret a juice since they are underage to drink alcohol. Boom. They all heard an explosion coming from upstairs. I guess Tadia and Sage are at it again, said Amara as she looked up. Ever since Tadia came back and awakened her guardian powers, Sage has been the one helping her in learning how to control her new power, and it was going pretty until it came to the more advanced part of being a guardian, making use of the white power, the special energy of a guardian, which has been proven difficult for Tadia to learn as she destroy everything in the process. It even went as far as almost destroying the Mikaelsons' mansion in the process, causing Freya to fortify the entire mansion, making it capable of even taking a hit from one of her siblings and remain unscathed. They should take this somewhere else. They are making too much noise and my student and I are trying to concentrate here, for crying out loud, cried out Ketsia from upstairs, who got interrupted because of the noise. Sorry, Tadia apologized while also promising to keep it down a little, to which Ketsia appreciated before casting an isolation spell, cutting herself off from the outside world. I guess that's another doppelganger just by hearing the voice, said Margaret after she heard the voice of Tadia earlier. Yeah. Welcome to Council of Doppelgangers, expect you are not one. They all turned to see Katerina and the rest of the Creed members coming in, expect from Andre, who was still out with Jenna. Okay, this is definitely freaking me out, Margaret said when she saw Katerina walked without her disguise. You were the one who asked to be here. Nobody forced you to be here, said Malia as she put away her blood bag after she drank it. Dry. Where is Henrik? I thought he would be with you, asked Elena, who did not see her Henrik with them. He is out with Elijah looking for anything out of the ordinary, given our bonbon was about to be vampire dinner if it were not for Malia, which made them ran away in fear. So they are out there looking for vampires that are not of Mystic Falls or are acting strange. We don't want anything similar to what happened to Bonnie happen again, said Kai as he sat down. Seeing Kai sit down, she quickly went to take the spot besides him, making him and the others look at her in surprise. What are you doing? Said Kai. Nothing. I just want to sit, and this is the only free spot that I can find, said Margaret, acting like she did not know what was going on. Viktor smiled when he saw the way Margaret was clinging unto Kai. Malachi, you've got yourself a new admirer. You should beware. She is a talkative and asks questions too much, said Viktor as he also left the mansion to go join his siblings and also keep an eye out for Anna. She is a fine one. Margaret looked at Viktor leaving and did as if she was going to hit him, but found out that she could not move her hand. You shouldn't do that if you want to keep your shoulder intact, said Lexi, who apparently was the one who stopped her from doing whatever she thought of doing. After she said that, Lexi released her and went to sit down with her own student Vicki. Margaret didn't bother about it either and turned to focus on Kai, who did not even give her any attention. So I heard you are a vampire witch hybrid, said Margaret, hoping to start a conversation. Yeah, and the only one in the creed, Kai answered without looking at her. Margaret smiled as she thought Kai wouldn't answer, but he did. So how old are you and how did you meet Viktor? She asked again, wanting to know more about him. Kai sighed as he remembered what Viktor said before he left. You want to know everything about me? Then let me say this. I killed my whole family and I didn't bat an eye worse of it. I wasn't a vampire at the time, and if I was given chance to do it again, I will, and I will do so gladly. That's the kind of person I am. So if you think something is going to happen between us, then I'm sorry to disappoint you. I am a psychopath who derives pleasure in killing, Kai said before he stood up and left. Everybody felt bad for Margaret, but did she need it? Nah. Instead she became even determined to get to know him because she knew that everyone was not born evil. Something made them, and if he killed off his whole family, then they did something that made him do it, and she is going to find out and make him change his mind about committing to anyone. Because if he is a psychopath, then she is an even bigger one when it comes to something or someone she has taken an interest in. Chapter 87. Viktor and Anna. Several weeks later, Margaret and Jeremy were on their way to class when they bumped into a girl their age. Hey Anna, I'm sorry, I didn't see you coming, but what are you doing here? Said Jeremy, who helped her up. The girl, who turned out to be Annabelle, the daughter of Pearl, smiled as she looked at Jeremy. It's okay, and I am just here to look around. I didn't think I would bump into you, she said. Hello, is anyone going to tell me who's who? Said Margaret, who appeared to become a ghost to these two. Oh sorry, Marg, this Anna, this is Margaret, my cousin, said Jeremy as he introduced the two girls to each other. Margaret stretched her hands for a handshake, to which Anna reciprocated, something she will regret later on. As soon as their hands met, Anna felt her skins burning, to which she immediately let go of Margaret's hands. Margaret's, on the other hand, smiled as she looked at Anna as if she was a prey while muttering, "You are dead," to her, and walked away. Hey, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Did she do something to you? Jeremy asked, concerned for her as he knew how mischievous Margaret can be sometimes. No, it's nothing. I will get going now. See you later, said Margaret. Yeah, I will be at the Mystic Grill. You can meet me there, Jeremy said as he saw Anna walk away hurriedly. He also wanted to go look for Margaret to confront her, but it seems that won't be possible anytime soon, as he has a class now which he would not want to miss. After school, Margaret evaded Jeremy, who was looking for her everywhere, and she did not want to be seen by him right now because he is going to ask about Anna and she is not ready for that yet. She saw Elena, Henrik and the rest of the Creed members and was on her way to meet them, but someone got to her first and covered her mouth to prevent her from screaming as they speed her to the back of the school, making sure nobody was there. You know who I was, and yet you had the guts to mess around with me. You are truly fearless, said Anna, who was the one that dragged Margaret here. After getting a hold of herself after she was speed here out of her own violation, she raised her head to look at her kidnapper and smiled. You are the one who is truly fearless. I wonder what will happen to you if you harm a single hair on my head, said Margaret as she knew who was having her back. Anna was surprised to see that even in the face of danger, Margaret was still her usual self and was still able to threaten her, which should not be so given the situation she is in. What or who is giving you the courage to threaten a vampire who can kill you anytime she feels like, said Anna while revealing her true face. Me. Before Anna could turn to look at the person behind her, she has been slammed to the wall. You do know that you could have been killed by her and nobody will know, and your sister will be grieving once again for your loss, said the man who helped her. Margaret stood up and walked to Anna, who was still pinned to the wall by the man. I saw in the hall when we bumped into her, and from the way she was acting and my girly instinct kicked in, I knew she was lying and just wanted to get close to Jeremy, which I know to be impossible unless she wants something from him, and no human girl would need anything from Jeremy to go that far. So I decided to test the new items Henrik brought over on her, and it worked. She turned out to be a vampire, and seeing you watch us, I had nothing to fear, Mr. Viktor, said Margaret, who wanted to punch Anna in the face, but Viktor stopped her. You can go now. I would like to have a moment alone with our vampire here, Anna, right? Said Viktor. Margaret wasn't pleased, but who was she to go against an original? But can I just punch her even if once? I have to get back at her for dragging me here and making me wanna puke, she said as she balled her fist. But Viktor shook his head, to which she frowned and looked at Anna and muttered, next time. With that she left and went to join the others and build her relationship with Malachi, who was slowly becoming less annoyed by her presence. After Margaret left, Viktor freed Anna, who immediately wanted to escape, but Viktor stopped her from even trying. "I'm Viktor Mikaelson, if you are wondering, and I would like to ask you some questions if you don't mind," said Viktor after Anna resigned to her fate after many attempts to escape. Anna looked at him wearily. "What do you want to know?" she said. Viktor smiled as Anna was willing to answer him. "My first question, why are you trying to get close to Jeremy?" he asked. "Because he is cute and he is kind of my type," replied Anna. "That I don't doubt, but I know you are up to something and Jeremy is your key to getting it, and that brings us to my second question, what is it that you are looking for?" Viktor asked again, and this time Anna was speechless and did not know what to say. "Cat got your tongue. Don't worry, I won't kill you or anything, instead I might help you in getting what you want. So why don't you be a darling and tell me what I need to know," said Viktor once again. Anna didn't fully trust him even when she heard what he said. She has been living all by herself all these years and she has picked up a few things in her long life. "You are trying to get to the tomb vampires, are you not?" Anna opened her eyes wide as soon as Viktor said that and even moved back a little. How did you know about that?" stammering Anna asked Viktor, who only smiled at her. "Just as I thought. They were indeed tomb vampires and someone you hold dear is there, but what about the other vampire with you, what is it that he wants?" Viktor asked once again after confirming his theory. Seeing as everything she has been trying to desperately hide has been exposed, Anna had no reason to keep quiet anymore. "I don't know why Drake has been trying to get the tomb open, but I heard him talking about a woman or something close to that. The only reason I helped him was because he was someone with the same goal as me and I needed an ally in this town," said Anna as she was on the verge of breaking down into tears. Viktor looked at her and sighed but didn't say anything, but turned around to leave as he has already gotten what he needed. "Wait, what about what you said about helping me? Does it still stand?" Anna quickly asked Viktor. "Find out what this Drake person wants before I will be willing to help you." With that, Viktor left, leaving Anna all to herself. Chapter 88, Unsealing the Tomb. 2 weeks later, Mystic Falls Cemetery. "He did not tell me anything, but I did a little digging. I found out why he was here and trying to get into that tomb," said Anna, who was here with Malia, Viktor and Daphne as she told them about the plan of Drake. Viktor nodded at her resourcefulness. "So what does he want? What brought him into Mystic Falls?" he asked Anna. Anna brought out a book and passed it on to Viktor. "Everything you need to know is there. I've done my part, now can you please help me with the unsealing the tomb?" Viktor smiled after reading a few pages of the book and passed it to Daphne. "Get rid of him. That's your first mission," he said before turning to look at Anna and continued. "I can help you, but you see, there are other vampires in there and I can't have all those vampires running around in Mystic Falls, now can I? I don't care about any vampires, all I care about is that my mother is out of that tomb, please," said Anna on the verge of tears. "Just help the poor girl. She has already done everything you've asked for, and all that she asked is that she could be reunited with her mother once again," said Daphne, taking pity on little poor Anna. Viktor sighed. "Follow me. Let's go get your mother, but when I do lift the spell sealing the tomb, and the vampires are released, I expect you to keep them in check because I would hate to kill them just after they got their freedom," said Viktor as they all went to the old church. Elsewhere, Motu's, a broken table flew and crashed with a tall tree, completely destroying it. Phasmatos Incendia. Out of nowhere the destroyed table was on fire, even the broken pieces scattered on the ground. Clap tilde clap tilde clap tilde clap tilde clap tilde clap. Sound of people clapping could be heard around as they cheered the new witch on town, Bonnie Bennett. "I bet you can kick my ass now, Bonnie," said Elena as she hugged Bonnie. Bonnie hugged her back and smiled. "I could kick your ass before, I don't need magic to do that now," she said before looking around. Where is Caroline? She was supposed to be here. This was my big reveal and she missed it. I can't believe this. I think it is for the best. I don't see Caroline keeping her mouth shut after she finds out that you were witch," said Margaret while writing something in her diary. Elena gave her a side eye before she turned to look at Bonnie. "Maybe she forgot or was too busy to remember, which means she forgot. I am just saying the same thing, right?" asked Elena after realizing that she was saying the exact sake thing. Bonnie gave her a small smile and went back to her spell casting. "Hey, Malia said she saved 3 of Kai's siblings, right? Said Margaret. Elena nodded as she sat beside her. Yeah, she said that. Why are you asking? Elena asked. Margaret smiled and bit her pen. What about a family reunion? Elena shook her head. No, you can't do that. He murdered his entire family. The whole Gemini coven was destroyed that night, and you telling him that he has 3 other siblings alive. What do you think he is going to do, huh? Go over there and ask for their forgiveness. I highly doubt that, said Elena, not liking the idea. He won't do that, and wouldn't he know that Malia saved them by now? I mean, it has been a long time, and maybe he has moved on and wanting to reunite with his family after so long, and last I checked the Mikaelsons don't do things without a reason, so Malia keeping them alive might be for a reason, said Margaret. Even though I don't think it is the right thing to do right now, she must have kept them for a certain purpose, and meeting Kai again for a family reunion is just not right, Elena said before putting her focus back to Bonnie. She is right, now is not the time for Kai to meet with them. He might not have the urge to kill them anymore, but he is not going to be ready to face them, especially Joe. He scarred her for life. They turned to look at Lexi, who was followed by Vicki and another woman, Sarah Salvatore, daughter of Zach Salvatore and Gail. Hey, Lexi, what are you doing here, and what's she doing here? Margaret said as she eyed Sarah. She is here because she knows and wanted to hang out instead of sitting in that big mansion all by herself, said Lexi as she also sat besides the 2 siblings. Margaret looked at Sarah for a while before taking her gaze of her and continued with what she was doing. So she is a witch? Sarah asked as she saw Bonnie chanting spells after spells. Elena nodded without taking her eyes off Bonnie. The old church, Phasmatos salves nos ex malin, terra mora vantis quo incandis, et vesa quo ero signos. Victor chanted the spell used to uplift the seal on the tomb with ease, as if he was just picking his fingers. There you go. The seal has been lifted and the vampires can come out, but remember, these vampires are your responsibility, and if I find any one of them out of line, then I will take what I helped to get back. Your mother, said Victor as he left this godforsaken place. Malia went inside the tomb and came out after a few minutes with a dark-skinned man in hand. I'm taking this one, she said, and left the tomb with Daphne. Anna did not waste any more time and did not care about why Malia took one of the vampires, as she has a mother to reunite with after so many years. Chapter 89 Armory 1 Lockwood Mansion. The tomb vampires have escaped and they are now roaming the streets of Mystic Falls, and the death rates has spiked up since their release, said Elizabeth Forbes, the sheriff of Mystic Falls. And not only that, hospitals around Mystic Falls and even here are complaining about the recent disappearance of blood bags from the hospital. We can't continue like this, said Grayson Gilbert, who has recently returned home from his trip. So what do you suggest we do? And if we are all forgetting, then let me say it was our family that put these vampires in the tomb in the first place, which would mean they will be coming for us, said Mayor Lockwood. Actually, we can use that to our advantage. I have a device that can help in trapping these vampires and finishing what our ancestor did not get to finish, killing them, said Grayson. And how will you do that? Gathering all of these vampires in one place is going to be very hard, considering how hard it is to catch even one of them, said Victor, who might know what Grayson was planning. Grayson looked at Victor and furrowed his face. He has the weird feeling about him like he had seen him before or even heard of him, but he can't pinpoint where he had seen him. But he decided to think about that later as he has more pressing matters at hand. Actually, I do have a way to round them all up. It is a special device that my late great-great-grandfather made, but the problem is, one of the piece of the device is in the hands of one of the tomb vampires, Pearl, and getting it is going to be very difficult, said Grayson. I can help get it for you. I doubt a mummy vampire trapped in a tomb for almost 150 years can resist my charm. Don't flatter yourself, Damon, and don't underestimate a vampire as old as Pearl. They can be very hard to predict, said Elizabeth, who was besides him. A few weeks back, Damon decided to join the council on the behest of Victor, as he has nothing better to do and was bored, and nobody likes a bored Damon. A Salvatore and a Mikaelson coming into town the same time. I still find this very weird, said Grayson. Damon smiled as he looked at Grayson. Last time I checked, there was another Salvatore in Mystic Falls. 2 actually, isn't that right, Uncle Zach? Damon said as he looked at Zach, who sat at a corner. Listen here, now is not the time to be suspicious of one another. We have a bigger problem ahead of us, and if Damon can get that piece of the device you are looking for, Then I say we let him have a go at it, and besides he is the only single one in the council considering Logan went Mia," said Zack. Victor smiled as he saw how everything turned out for the Salvatore. If he hadn't inferred, Zack would have died by now and Sarah would have been raised by some other strange people and go to Duke and end up getting killed by a siren. Speaking of siren, he wondered if he should just release Sybil and find her sister, Celine, and have them work for him. That's after he kills Acardius. After some few discussions, they disbanded and called it a night. Grayson looked at the backs of both Victor and Damon and wondered what was up with them. He knew vividly that he has heard the name Viktor Mikaelson somewhere, but he can't figure it out. But his gut's feelings keeps telling him that that man is dangerous. After creating a large distance from the council, Victor dissolved into a shadow and appeared in a tunnel. He walked through the tunnels until he could hear people speaking from above him, saying things in an hurried tone. "Looks like they have a mission. Well, that we give me time to go in and out without needless bloodshed," said Victor as he walked around the tunnels until he walked out through a magically placed wall which was an illusion. He made his way out of the tunnels into a room filled with people aiming their guns at him. "And here I thought this was going to be very easy," said Victor. "It will be, depending on how you respond." A man in his late 40s walked out of the crowd of men with 3 girls following behind him. Victor recognized 2 of the girls, but the man and the other girl, he did not know of. "Well, I heard there was a secret organization here and I decided to come take a look for myself, and I have to say, you guys are effective as they say, but too bad you don't know who you were pointing that gun at," said Victor as he smiled. "At them. Actually, we do know who we are dealing with. You are one of the originals, or old ones some may call you, and that's why they haven't shit at you yet," said the man. "So you do know of me, then you must know none of your weapons can hurt me," said Victor as he walked towards the old man. Seeing him approaching their boss, the men cocked their gods and were ready to rain down bullets on Victor, but the man stopped them. "I know, that's why I wanted to go for the peaceful approach. I am Frederick Street, John, and these are my beautiful daughters, Alexandria Street, John, Virginia Street, John, and Yvette Street, John, and I am the head of the armory," said Frederick. Victor looked at the lineup and wondered if Enzo ever turned into a vampire, that would have completed their little street. "John family. Okay. I don't see why I should know this, but to show formality, I'm Viktor Mikaelson," said Victor as he went to take a seat to sit. "You are Victor, the tribrid?" asked Frederick, who was surprised to see the most dangerous man walking on the planet. He immediately told his men to put their guns down, not to offend Victor any more than they have already done. "Good, you know of me, that makes it easier to ask for what brought me here," said Victor as he stood up and walked to the door leading to the vault. "I want what's inside that vault, and the staff of Acardius, which you all know as the Tunning Bell, and a very special dagger. So who is going to help me out here?" Victor said, "It is not that we don't want to help, but the truth is, we can't get into the vault. There is something dangerous in there and it messes with the mind. It is very risky," said Virginia. Victor looked at the girl who just spoke and shook his head when he saw her. It was the crazy mental ill sister who was looked up because she didn't want anybody to open the vault even after her sister was locked inside. "Don't worry about that. Just open this door for me and I will handle it myself," said Victor, looking at Frederick. Before Frederick could give the command, Virginia raised her gun and fired at Victor, trying to kill him to prevent him from unleashing a greater evil into the world. But she didn't know about her history very well, as apparently the greatest evil is the one she just shot at. "You should keep your children on the leash lest they lose their heads," said Victor, who just dusted himself and punched the door, destroying it instantly. "That should serve as a warning to you." After that, Victor walked to the vault all by himself while Frederick sighed in relief before turning to berate his daughter for trying to get them killed. The vault. Victor walked inside the vault after siphoned the magic sealing the vault. As soon as he got inside, he heard the voice of his daughter Malia calling out to him, "Shut up, Sybil. I'm coming to get you out of here, so stop whatever you think you are doing or I will give you a fate worse than this," Victor said as he looked for the Tunning Bell and the dagger capable of killing Cade. After a while, he found the dagger and the staff of Acardius before seeing the skeletal Sybil. Chapter 90 Armory 2 Victor approached the skeletal form of Sybil, her gaunt features illuminated by the dim light of the vault. She looked up, her eyes empty, devoid of the life she once had. Victor moved with purpose, locating the tuning bell and the special dagger capable of killing Cade, ensuring he secured the artifacts before turning his attention back to Sybil. As he stood over her, he muttered a few incantations, breaking the enchantments that had bound her for centuries. Sybyl's eyes began to clear, her form slowly regenerating as Viktor's magic took effect. She remained silent, unable to speak or fully comprehend her situation yet. Viktor stepped back, watching her transformation with a cold detachment. "Sybil," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. "Your freedom comes at a price. I have a task for you." Sybil looked at him, her eyes now reflecting a mixture of fear and curiosity. Viktor knew she couldn't speak, but he also knew that her mind was keenly aware. He continued, "I need you to use your powers to serve me. Your abilities, they are unique, and I know that you are someone who would stop at nothing to get the job done." He held out a small vial filled with his blood. "Drink this. It will restore your strength and bind you to me. You will be free from this vault, but you will serve me." Sybil hesitated, but the promise of freedom and the overwhelming power emanating from Viktor convinced her. She took the vial and drank, feeling the life force surge through her, revitalizing her completely. Viktor smiled, a predatory glint in his eyes. "Good. Now, we have much to do. There are pests to be dealt with, and I need you at your full strength." As they left the vault, Frederick and his daughters watched with a mixture of awe and fear. Viktor paused for a moment, turning to face them, his eyes cold and calculating. "Listen carefully," Viktor said, his voice steady and menacing. "I have what I came for, and now Sybil is under my control. Stay out of my way, and you won't suffer. But interfere with my plans, and you will wish you were never born." Frederick nodded quickly, his face pale. "We understand. We won't interfere." Viktor's gaze lingered on each of them for a moment longer, ensuring his message was clear. Then, with a swift motion, he turned and led Sybil out of the armory and into the night. Outside, the air was cool and refreshing. Viktor turned to Sybil, now fully restored. "Your first task is to find your sister, Celine. Use your siren abilities to locate her. Once we have her, we can harness both of your powers to draw out your master, and kill him once and for all." "There can only be one devil," Sybil nodded, understanding the gravity of her mission. She turned and disappeared into the night, her newfound strength and abilities making her task achievable. With a final glance at the armory, Viktor dissolved into a shadow and disappeared into the night, leaving behind a silence filled with dread and the promise of impending chaos. Mystic Grill. Inside the Mystic Grill, the atmosphere buzzed with the usual hum of chatter, clinking glasses, and soft music playing in the background. Damon Salvatore sat at the bar, his eyes scanning the room with a mixture of boredom and curiosity. He sipped his bourbon, waiting for his contact to arrive. Pearl walked in, her presence immediately drawing attention. She moved with an air of confidence, her eyes sharp and watchful. Spotting Damon, she made her way to him, her expression a blend of curiosity and suspicion. "Damon," she greeted, sliding onto the barstool next to him. "What is so urgent that you had to meet me here?" Damon smiled, a charming yet dangerous glint in his eyes. "Pearl, it's been a while. Let's just say there's a situation that requires your unique expertise." Pearl raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "And what situation might that be?" Damon leaned in, lowering his voice. "The tomb vampires have escaped, and things are getting messy in Mystic Falls. We need to bring them under control. I heard there's a device, or rather a piece of it, that could be useful in dealing with them. And I believe you know something about it." Pearl's eyes narrowed, her suspicion growing. "And why should I help you, Damon? After everything your family has done?" Damon shrugged, his expression turning serious. "Because if we don't get this under control, there will be more bloodshed, and not just from vampires. Humans will start hunting us down, and none of us want that. Besides, if you help, you might be able to secure a safer position for yourself and the other tomb vampires." Pearl considered his words, her eyes never leaving Damon's. "And what do you get out of this?" "Information and leverage," Damon replied smoothly. "I'm not doing this for Grayson Gilbert. I need to know more about this device and what it can do. It's in my best interest to keep Mystic Falls from turning into a war zone." Pearl sighed, clearly weighing her options. "Fine, but don't think for a second that I trust you, Damon. I'll tell you what I know, but I'm not showing you the piece. Not until I know I can trust you." Damon raised an eyebrow, surprised but intrigued. "All right, fair enough. What can you tell me?" Pearl glanced around to ensure they weren't being overheard before leaning closer. The device you're talking about is in several pieces. I have one of them. It's a Gilbert invention, designed to incapacitate vampires. But putting it together and making it work is another story. Damon listened intently, nodding. And you have a piece of it. Do you know where the other pieces are? Pearl shook her head. Only vague rumors. One is said to be with another family in Mystic Falls, but I can't be sure. Damon leaned back, considering her words. All right, Pearl, this is a good start. Keep your piece safe, and if you hear anything about the other pieces, let me know. As Pearl stood to leave, she gave Damon one last, hard look. Remember, Damon, if you betray us, there will be consequences. Damon watched her go, pondering her words. He finished his drink, his mind racing with the new information. Things were finally starting to fall into place. Just as he was about to leave, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and saw a message from Viktor. Sybil is free and on the move. Prepare for the next phase. Damon's smile widened. It seemed like things were about to get even more interesting in Mystic Falls. Good news, I'm back to updating my fanfics once again, but I won't be updating it frequently. I will be able to only upload at most 2 chapters per week. Thank you for your patience with me, and also check out my novels and my other fics. More importantly, I just dropped a new FIC based on The Flash. You are going to love it. Chapter 91 Return. The night had settled uneasily over Mystic Falls, casting long shadows that mirrored the town's growing fears. While the days passed with a semblance of normalcy, the nights were stained with blood. The recent string of brutal killings had sent a wave of terror through the community, driving the citizens indoors as soon as the sun dipped below the horizon. It was a fear that gripped the entire town, making even the most mundane evening stroll a distant memory. In Mayor Lockwood's living room, the tension was palpable. The council members gathered, their faces etched with concern. Mayor Lockwood, usually composed, was pacing back and forth, his movements sharp and restless, reflecting the pressure mounting on him from all sides. We have to do something about these vampires, he said, his voice carrying the weight of desperation. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, the lines on his forehead deepening as he continued to pace. They're becoming uncontrollable. The citizens are demanding action, and we can't keep stalling them. Elizabeth Forbes, sitting with her back straight and arms crossed, exchanged a worried glance with Grayson Gilbert, who was seated beside her. Grayson, usually a man of few words, exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair as if searching for the right words. I hate to bring this up, Grayson began, his tone measured but heavy, but I think our best bet lies with the same vampires who are terrorizing us. His gaze moved across the room, landing on each council member before continuing, which means we might have to resort to extreme measures to get the other piece of the device from her. Elizabeth nodded slowly, her lips pressed into a thin line. Her blue eyes were filled with a mix of resignation and resolve. He's right, she said, her voice quieter but no less firm. We might not have any other choice. At that moment, Viktor, who had been standing near the back of the room, observing the exchange in silence, took a step forward. His presence was commanding, his posture relaxed yet authoritative. His piercing eyes locked onto Grayson's, searching for any hint of hesitation. And what would those extreme measures be, if I may ask? Viktor inquired, his tone calm but edged with a dangerous curiosity. Grayson shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening slightly. He looked up at Viktor, the weight of the suggestion pressing on him. We need to force Pearl's hand, Grayson replied, his voice steady but tinged with unease. If she won't willingly give us the piece, we might have to make her. Elizabeth's expression darkened, her gaze dropping to the floor for a moment before she met Viktor's eyes again. It's not something any of us want to do, she added, her voice softer, as if trying to justify the thought. But if it means saving more lives, we have to consider it. Mayor Lockwood stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing as he processed their words. He folded his arms across his chest, his brow furrowing in contemplation. The idea clearly troubled him, but the desperation in his eyes was unmistakable. And how exactly do you propose we do that, Grayson? He asked, his voice low, almost hesitant. Grayson took a deep breath, the tension in the room thickening as he answered. By using what she cares about most, her daughter. Viktor's eyes glinted with a predatory light, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. Ah, I see, he murmured, his voice silky smooth. You intend to leverage her emotions against her. A risky move, but effective if done correctly. The room fell into a heavy silence, each council member grappling with the moral implications of the plan. The unease was clear in their faces. Tension lines around the eyes, clenched jaws, fingers tapping nervously against armrests. Mayor Lockwood broke the silence, his voice laced with reluctant resolve. We'll discuss the details later, he said, his tone final. But if we go down this path, we need to be prepared for the consequences. Viktor inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the decision with a cold, knowing smile. Indeed, we wouldn't want things to get out of hand, now would we? As the council members exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of what they were planning hung heavy in the air. The decision had been made, but the cost was yet to be paid. Elsewhere the moon hung high in the sky, casting its pale light over the secluded clearing where a vampire had cornered his prey. The woman, trembling and wide-eyed, backed away until her spine pressed against the rough bark of a tree. The vampire, eyes dark with hunger, leaned in closer, his fangs extending as he prepared to sink them into her neck. Just as the vampire was about to strike, a smooth, mocking voice broke the silence. That's no way to treat a lady, the voice said, cutting through the tension like a knife. The vampire froze, his fangs inches from the woman's throat. Slowly, he turned his head, his eyes narrowing as they landed on the figure who had spoken. It was a man, standing casually in the shadows at the edge of the clearing, his posture relaxed, hands in his pockets, as if he hadn't a care in the world. The vampire's lips curled into a sneer, his grip on the woman tightening. Come teach me the proper way to talk to a lady, then, he spat, his voice dripping with contempt. The man chuckled, a low, amused sound that seemed to reverberate through the clearing. I would have very much obliged, he said, his tone light and almost playful. But you see, my sister wants to do it herself. Before the vampire could fully process the words, a force like a sledgehammer struck him from the side. A hand grabbed his shoulder with a grip of iron, and in an instant, he was hurled through the air. He crashed into a tree with bone-shattering force, the trunk splintering under the impact. The vampire groaned, disoriented but quick to recover. He scrambled to his feet, a snarl tearing from his throat as he glared at his assailant. But the figure that stepped out of the shadows, a woman, her blonde hair catching the moonlight, regarded him with cold, disdainful eyes. She looked at him as though he were nothing more than an insect, an annoyance beneath her notice. You were saying something about being taught how to treat a lady? She asked, her voice sharp as glass. Well, the first lesson is never to glare at one. The vampire barely had time to blink before she moved, her form blurring as she sped towards him. In a heartbeat, she was in front of him, her hand plunging into his chest with brutal efficiency. His eyes widened in shock and pain as her fingers closed around his heart. Keep that in mind in your next life, she said coldly, and with a single, vicious tug, she ripped the heart from his chest. The vampire's body went slack, his eyes glazing over as he crumpled to the ground, lifeless. The woman who had been his intended victim watched the scene in horror, her scream piercing the night air as she saw the bloody heart still clutched in the blonde woman's hand. The man from the shadows moved quickly, his expression softening as he approached the terrified woman. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, his eyes locking with hers. Shish, he whispered, a soothing smile playing on his lips. I would have loved to have you for myself, but you're in luck tonight. My brother says never to eat from the people of Mystic Falls right now. The woman's terrified expression began to relax as his compulsion took hold. Her body seemed to go limp, her eyes glassy as she stared up at him. You'll forget everything that happened tonight, he continued, his voice smooth and hypnotic. You're going to go home, sleep, and wake up tomorrow like it's any other day. She nodded slowly, her mind blank and obedient. Without another word, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the night. The man watched her go, his smile fading as he turned back to his sister. Clean your mess, Rebecca, he said, his tone now laced with a mixture of annoyance and fondness. Rebecca looked down at the lifeless vampire, her lip curling in disgust. With a flick of her wrist, she conjured a small fireball in the palm of her hand. The flames danced in her eyes as she tossed it onto the corpse, the fire quickly consuming it until nothing remained but ashes. Done, she said, dusting her hands off as if she had just finished a trivial task. "Now let's get out of here. It's time for some family reunion." Cole grinned, his eyes glinting with a mix of excitement and mischief. "Couldn't agree more, sister. Let's go make it a night to remember." With that, the two originals vanished into the night, leaving behind nothing but the smoldering remains of the vampire who had dared cross their path. Chapter 92 Return to Inches. Why aren't you stopping the council from getting their hands on the last piece of the device? Malia's voice was edged with frustration as she leaned against the doorframe, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Won't it blow our cover if they manage to put it together?" Her father, Viktor, sat calmly at his desk, the warm glow of a lamp casting shadows across the room as he flipped through the pages of an ancient text, preparing for his lecture the next day. He didn't look up immediately, as if her question was of little consequence. Finally, he paused, closing the book with a soft thud, and met his daughter's eyes, his expression as unreadable as ever. "There's no need to worry about that," he said in a low, measured tone. "The device has no effect against us." He picked up his pen again, his gaze returning to the papers in front of him. "Who you should be worried about is Vicki. She will be affected by the magical properties of the device once it's activated." Malia's brow furrowed, her annoyance flaring as she pushed off the doorframe, pacing the room. "And why?" she began, her voice tinged with incredulity. "Should I care about Vicki? I don't know her that well." Her father didn't look at her, his focus seemingly back on his work as he calmly replied, "Because that's your assignment." Malia stopped in her tracks, staring at him in disbelief, her mouth slightly open. "My assignment," she repeated, her voice raising just a little, struggling to comprehend what he meant. The frustration was evident in the furrow of her brow, the way her hands curled into fists at her sides. "What do you mean that's my assignment?" Before Viktor could respond, a soft click of heels echoed down the hallway, and Malia's mother, Ketsia, entered the room with a knowing smile, holding a glass of bourbon for Viktor. Her presence commanded attention, her elegance sharpened by an underlying, dangerous edge. "Malia, darling," Ketsia began, her voice smooth as silk, yet carrying an unmistakable authority. She moved toward Viktor, gracefully setting the glass on the desk before turning her attention to her daughter. "Without using your vampire or werewolf abilities and only relying on your magic, I want you to create an artifact to shield Vicki from the effects of Jonathan Gilbert's device." Malia's eyes widened, her shock evident as she stared at her mother. "You can't be serious," she muttered, blinking in disbelief. But before she could argue further, Ketsia's lips curled into a terrifying grin, her dark eyes flashing with amusement. "Oh, we're very serious," Ketsia said, her tone almost teasing as she exchanged a glance with Viktor. "Your father and I discussed it, and we agreed. No arguments." Malia's gaze darted between her mother and father, searching for some sign of mercy from Viktor, but all he offered was a slight shrug, as if the decision had already been made long ago. He picked up his glass of bourbon and took a sip, his expression utterly relaxed, as though the conversation were no more important than the weather. "You're both really on board with this?" Malia asked, her voice laced with disbelief as her eyes lingered on her father, hoping for some sign that he would relent. Viktor set the glass down and leaned back in his chair, meeting his daughter's eyes with a calm but firm expression. "You'll thank us later," he said simply, the faintest hint of a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. Malia's shoulders slumped slightly as she realized there was no way out of this. She let out an exasperated sigh, her frustration clear in the way she threw her hands up in defeat. "Fine," she muttered under her breath. "I'll do it." Ketsia's grin widened, satisfaction gleaming in her eyes as she stepped closer to Malia, placing a hand on her shoulder. "That's my girl," she whispered, her voice dripping with pride and a hint of mischief. "Now, let's see what kind of magic you're truly capable of." Malia shot her mother a glare, still not entirely thrilled, but there was a flicker of determination in her eyes. With a heavy sigh, Malia turned on her heel and left her parents behind, their voices fading as she made her way through the winding halls of the Mikaelson home. The house was large and imposing, the echoes of her footsteps bouncing off the walls, but her mind was preoccupied with her new, unwanted assignment. As she entered the living room, a strange, creeping sensation prickled at the back of her neck, an instinct she had learned not to ignore. Something was wrong. She paused mid-step, her senses heightened, and just as she spun around, her hand shot up with lightning speed, catching a dagger hurtling toward her. She stared at the gleaming blade in her hand, her lips curling into an exasperated smile. "Really, Uncle Cole," she said, shaking her head as she lowered the weapon. "Still not going to stop pulling all these tricks?" From the shadows, Cole stepped forward, his usual mischievous grin plastered across his face. His dark eyes sparkled with amusement as he sauntered toward her, hands in his pockets. "And miss the part where I get to teach my favorite niece a lesson or two." He chuckled as he flopped down onto the couch, lounging as if he owned the place. "Come on, Malia, you know me better than that." Malia rolled her eyes, though a smirk tugged at the corner of her lips. "One of these days, I'm going to throw one of these back at you." Cole raised a playful brow, leaning forward with mock seriousness. "Oh, I'm counting on it." Before Malia could respond, the sound of footsteps approached from the other side of the room. Rebecca entered, her eyes quickly scanning the space as if something were amiss. She furrowed her brow, crossing her arms as her gaze settled on Malia. "Where is everyone?" she asked, her voice carrying a slight edge of irritation. "Where are Freya, Elijah, and Henrik? And why is this house so empty?" Malia shrugged, stepping past Cole as she made her way to the bar, moving with effortless grace as she vamped speed to prepare drinks for her aunt and uncle. "Not sure where Aunt Freya or Uncle Elijah are," she said, grabbing a glass. "But Henrik's probably at Alina's. He mentioned something about helping her with something." Malia turned back to them, a drink in each hand, handing one to Cole and the other to Rebecca. "Here," she said with a small smile, "something to take the edge off." Cole accepted the glass with a dramatic flourish, lifting it in a mock toast. "To family reunions, secret assignments, and dodging daggers. Cheers, Malia." Rebecca's lips quirked into a small smile, though her eyes held that ever-present glint of wariness. She took a sip from her glass, her gaze lingering on Malia for a moment longer. "Cheers," she echoed quietly, though her thoughts seemed to be somewhere else. Chapter 93. Talking to Pearl. Stefan and Damon approached the large, weathered building with purpose, the moon casting long shadows behind them as they strode up to the door. Damon's eyes sparkled with his usual mischievous glint, while Stefan remained focused, his expression neutral but tense. The old house, worn down yet still imposing, seemed to loom over them, and Stefan could feel the tension in the air. Damon was the first to knock, rapping his knuckles sharply against the wooden door. A few seconds passed before the door creaked open, revealing an older woman standing in the dim light of the doorway, her eyes narrowing slightly as she took in the sight of the two men before her. Damon's lips curved into a sly smile, his eyes flicking over her with obvious amusement. "Well, would you look at that," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "They kept the old hag. How charming." He chuckled to himself, as if entertained by his own remark. "Guess Pearl doesn't want other vampires getting too cozy in her little territory." The older woman's eyes darkened slightly at Damon's words, but she said nothing, holding her posture stiff and composed. Stefan, sensing the tension, stepped forward with a calm yet firm tone. "We're here to see Pearl," he said, his gaze steady. "Tell her the Salvatore brothers are here." The woman raised an eyebrow, her gaze lingering on Stefan for a moment longer, as if sizing him up. "And who should I say is calling?" she asked, her voice rough and unimpressed. Stefan met her gaze evenly, his tone steady but with a hint of impatience. "Just tell her the Salvatore brothers. She'll know who we are." The woman gave a slow nod, her movements deliberate, almost as if she was weighing whether to actually comply. She turned on her heel, her back hunched slightly with age, and began to shuffle back into the house. As she retreated, Damon leaned in toward Stefan, his voice a low murmur filled with amusement. "You'd think after all these years, they'd upgrade their doorman. Maybe someone less ancient." Stefan shot his brother a warning glance, shaking his head slightly. "Focus, Damon," he muttered under his breath. Damon merely shrugged, his usual smirk never leaving his face as he leaned casually against the doorframe, waiting. After a few minutes, Pearl appeared in the hallway, though she kept her distance, standing at the threshold of the dimly lit room. She didn't trust the Salvatore brothers, not fully, and her instincts told her to be cautious. Her gaze flickered between them, sharp and calculating, her hands folded in front of her as if to maintain an air of control. "To what do I owe this pleasant visit?" she asked coolly, her voice laced with suspicion, though she maintained a polite demeanor. Her eyes narrowed slightly, studying their expressions as if waiting for the trick she was certain they were hiding. Stephen, not wanting to waste time, stepped forward, his expression serious. "We're here for the other half of the device," he said plainly, his voice steady and direct. "And this isn't just a request from us, it's coming from higher up. He saved you, Pearl. On the behest of your daughter, no less. It would be a waste if you died, so he's giving you a chance. Take your daughter and leave town as fast as you can." Pearl's eyes darkened at his words, her brow furrowing as she took in what Stephen was saying. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her posture stiffening with indignation. She wasn't one to respond kindly to threats, no matter how veiled they were. Her fingers twitched slightly, betraying her irritation. "I'm afraid I'll have to refuse your generous offer," she replied, her voice cool but firm. Her eyes locked onto Stephen's, unyielding. "And you can tell whoever sent you that if they want something from me, they can come here themselves. I don't negotiate through intermediaries, especially ones I don't trust." Her words were sharp, final, as she turned on her heel, preparing to leave. But before she could fully turn away, Damon's laughter rang out, cold and mocking. It echoed through the hallway, causing Pearl to pause in her step. Damon stepped forward, his eyes flashing with amusement as his lips curled into a smirk. "How laughable," Damon drawled, his tone dripping with sarcasm. His gaze shifted from Pearl to Stephen, as if to emphasize how ridiculous he found her response. "You think refusing us is safe? Us being here, Pearl, was already a risk to your little sanctuary." His smirk faded, replaced by a deadly seriousness as he took another step toward her. "When he arrives, he's going to burn your so-called safe haven to the ground with nothing but a snap of his fingers." Damon's eyes turned dark, his vampire features emerging, veins bulging beneath his eyes, his fangs visible as he spoke. "So I'm going to say this one last time," he hissed, his voice low and menacing, "hand over the piece and get out of town, before you force me to make you." The room grew tense as Damon's words hung in the air, thick with the weight of his threat. Pearl's face remained composed, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes as she processed his words. For a brief moment, her fingers twitched at her side, as if debating whether to strike back or stand her ground. She stared at Damon, her resolve wavering, though her expression remained defiant. Stefan, watching the exchange closely, remained silent, but his gaze flickered toward Damon, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. He knew his brother well enough to understand that the playful banter was over. This was now a dangerous game. Pearl's expression hardened as she turned away from the Salvatore brothers, her posture rigid, refusing to give in to their threats. "Do your worst," she said icily, her voice resolute. Without another glance, she strode down the hallway, her footsteps echoing ominously in the stillness of the room. She motioned to the older woman standing nearby. "Close the door on our visitors." The old woman nodded obediently and began shuffling toward the door, her movements slow and deliberate. The tension in the air was palpable, as the brothers stood unmoving, their eyes following her every step. Stefan sighed heavily, his gaze narrowing on the old woman's retreating form. "Big mistake," he muttered under his breath, his eyes darkening with a sudden, lethal intensity. Before anyone could react, a wooden stake flew through the air with terrifying speed. The old woman barely had time to turn before it impaled her chest, pinning her to the wall with a sickening thud. Her eyes widened in shock, and within seconds, her body went limp, lifeless. The threshold that had kept the vampires at bay flickered and vanished. Damon's lips twisted into a devilish grin, his fangs glinting as his vampire features became more pronounced. He turned his head toward Stefan, his voice smooth yet menacing. "After you, Ripper." Stefan met his brother's gaze, his once calm demeanor dissolving as his own face contorted into a wicked grin. His eyes gleamed with a sadistic hunger, veins creeping beneath his skin. "Oh, with pleasure," he growled, the thrill of violence electrifying his voice. In a blur of movement, Stefan Vamp sped into the house, his body moving with terrifying precision and speed. Damon followed closely behind, his expression one of cold amusement as he watched his brother revel in the chaos. Stefan's movements were fluid, controlled but brutal, as he targeted the remaining vampires inside, his eyes gleaming with the familiar bloodlust that earned him the name, Ripper. Damon, always the observer, leaned casually against the wall for a moment, watching Stefan with a twisted sense of pride. Always one for dramatic entrances, he mused quietly, before springing into action himself, his laughter echoing through the room as he joined the fray. Pearl, hearing the commotion, froze mid-step, her heart sinking as the sound of Stefan's rampage reverberated through the house. She turned slowly, dread pooling in her stomach as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. The brothers were in. Chapter 94, They All Are. The house was a scene of absolute carnage. Headless bodies lay scattered across the floor, blood pooling around mutilated limbs and torn torsos. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood, and the silence that followed was suffocating in the wake of the massacre. Stefan and Damon stood among the chaos, their clothes and faces stained with blood, their expressions calm, almost bored. Stefan casually wiped his hands on a torn piece of fabric he had ripped from one of the fallen vampires, his movements precise, almost methodical. His face showed no remorse, only the quiet satisfaction that came after. Indulging his darker urges, Damon, sitting comfortably on a blood-splattered chair, grinned as he licked the last drop of blood from his fingers, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Well, that was fun," Damon remarked, his tone light and nonchalant, as if they had just completed a trivial task. He glanced over at Stefan, who merely shrugged, his face still twisted into a predatory smile. Damon then leaned back, crossing his legs as if he hadn't just participated in a massacre. Turning his attention toward Pearl, who stood frozen in shock and horror, Damon raised an eyebrow. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a handkerchief to dab at the blood on his neck, then gave her a sly, almost mocking grin. "So, Pearlie," Damon said, emphasizing the nickname with a playful lilt, "I suppose it's time for you to hand over that little piece of the device we're looking for, hem." His tone was light-hearted, but the dangerous edge behind his words was unmistakable. He didn't need to threaten her directly, the carnage surrounding them spoke volumes. Pearl's eyes darted from one mutilated body to the next, her breath catching in her throat as she took in the gruesome scene. Her chest heaved with a mix of anger and fear, but she kept her expression steely, unwilling to show weakness in front of the brothers. "You're out of your mind if you think I'm just going to," she started, but Damon interrupted, his grin widening as he leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing in on her. "Pearlie, Pearlie, Pearlie," he said, dragging out her name with a mocking purr. "Look around you." He gestured to the mangled bodies around them, his hand moving lazily as though it were all a trivial matter. "This was just the opening act. Imagine what we could do if we were really trying. Or worse, imagine what he could do if he decides to pay you a visit." Stefan chuckled darkly from his seat, his eyes gleaming with a cruel amusement. He cracked his knuckles, as if signaling that he was ready for more if necessary. Pearl swallowed hard, trying to maintain her composure as she met Damon's gaze. But the cold, calculating look in his eyes unnerved her. She knew they weren't bluffing. Damon leaned back again, watching her intently, his smile never fading. "So, how about you stop wasting time and just hand it over, Pearlie?" His voice was soft now, coaxing, but there was an unspoken threat beneath it that chilled the air between them. Pearl clenched her fists, her jaw tight, knowing she had no real choice. Pearl, her face pale, tried to keep her composure. She glanced briefly at the massacre around her, the weight of her situation pressing down on her like a vice. "Fine," she replied, though her voice wavered slightly. She straightened her back, clinging to the last shred of control she thought she had. "But I want to know what you intend to do with the piece." Stefan's chuckle was low and menacing as he leaned forward, his cold gaze locking onto Pearl. His usually calm demeanor shifted, his eyes darkening with the promise of violence. "You think you're still in a position to ask questions," he said, the amusement in his voice barely masking the threat. "Let me clear this up for you. There's only a third of your little tomb vampires left. Those who remain are a liability. They're reckless, putting all of us at risk of exposure. We're going to use this device to take care of them. Now," he paused, his eyes glowing a menacing red, "hand it over." Pearl's heart raced as she felt a shiver run down her spine. Any facade of power she held onto crumbled under Stefan's cold stare. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached into her pocket and pulled out the piece of the device. Her eyes darted nervously between the two brothers, fear overtaking any thoughts of resistance. Without a word, she handed it to Damon, her movements quick, Desperate. Damon's grin widened as he took the device from her, spinning it lightly in his fingers as though it were a prize. He shot a glance at the mangled bodies strewn about the room and shrugged with mock sympathy. Now, see, this wouldn't have happened if you'd just been a little more cooperative earlier, he said smoothly, his tone almost playful. His eyes flicked to the corpses, then back to Pearl. But no harm done, right? Well, maybe for them. He gestured carelessly toward the carnage. Pearl didn't respond, her gaze fixed on the blood-soaked floor, knowing fully well that any resistance she could muster now would be futile. The brothers had won. Damon and Stefan wasted no time heading straight to the Gilbert house after acquiring the final piece of the device. Their approach was swift, their expressions focused, though Damon couldn't resist a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. He knocked on the door with a casual flick of his wrist, and within moments, the door swung open, revealing Miranda Gilbert. Miranda's face lit up with recognition, her warm smile directed at Damon. "Damon, what brings you here?" she asked, her tone friendly, though there was a slight curiosity in her eyes. She glanced briefly at Stefan, her gaze lingering a bit longer on the unfamiliar face. Damon, ever the charmer, flashed one of his signature smiles, his blue eyes twinkling. "Ah, Miranda, always a pleasure," he said smoothly, his voice velvety. "We're here to see Grayson, actually. And this," he gestured to Stefan, who gave a polite nod, "is my little brother, Stefan." Stefan gave a polite smile, his hands folded neatly in front of him, a contrast to Damon's laid-back posture. "Nice to meet you," he said, his tone soft but firm, his eyes scanning the room subtly. Miranda nodded, her smile still in place as she stepped aside to invite them in. "Of course, come in. I'll go fetch Grayson for you," she said, gesturing toward the living room as she turned to head upstairs. As they stepped inside, the brothers immediately noticed a heated conversation unfolding in the living room. Henrik, Elena, and Margaret sat around the table, their voices low but intense. Margaret, in particular, was the most animated, her hands flying through the air as she passionately made her point, her face flushed with frustration. Damon's eyebrow quirked in amusement as he leaned slightly toward Stefan. "Looks like we've walked into a family drama," he whispered with a smirk, though his voice was low enough not to interrupt the ongoing argument. Miranda gently pushed open the door to their bedroom, her eyes landing on Grayson seated by the window. He was hunched over, his back tense, and a journal lay open in his trembling hands. His face was pale, eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and fear, fixed on the words scrawled across the pages. His lips moved faintly, barely above a whisper as he muttered, "They are vampires, they all are." Chapter 95 Jonathan Gilbert's Journal entry of Jonathan Gilbert date, September 18, 1864. The past few days have revealed troubling news in Mystic Falls, much of it centered around Giuseppe Salvatore's suspicions of Viktor Mikaelson and his family. Giuseppe, always a man governed by his instincts, seems convinced that Viktor is not merely one of us but something far more dangerous. His paranoia has grown to the point where he is ready to act on it, despite the lack of substantial evidence. Yet, there are oddities surrounding the Mikaelsons that we cannot ignore. Giuseppe has grown insistent, claiming that Viktor and his family are vampires, or worse. His latest accusation, that the Mikaelsons are somehow aging slower than ordinary folk, has some truth to it. Though none of us have witnessed anything directly implicating Viktor, it is undeniable that he, his wife, his sister Freya, and even their young daughter Malia, seem to defy time. I, like the others, dismissed it initially, for no evidence surfaced of vampiric behavior. Vervain has had no effect on them, and neither have they shown the aversion to sunlight that vampires are known for. Still, Giuseppe remains firm in his belief, and I cannot shake the feeling that perhaps we should dig deeper into the matter. Tonight, as the council gathered, Giuseppe once again shared his suspicions, this time with the sheriff, William Forbes, at his side. William, normally cautious, has found himself agreeing with Giuseppe's concerns. In light of recent events, strange deaths around town, with bodies drained of blood, William could no longer ignore the uneasy coincidences. He suspects the Mikaelsons as well. As the council meeting progressed, tempers flared. Jacob Lockwood and Thomas Fell remained skeptical, trying to ground us in logic. They pointed out that vampires cannot have children, reminding us that Viktor has a daughter, Malia. However, Giuseppe's rage is blinding him to reason. He doesn't care for logic, only for ridding Mystic Falls of what he believes is a growing threat. Despite the council's reluctance, William Forbes and Giuseppe have concocted a plan. Tomorrow night, Giuseppe will confront the Mikaelsons while William slips into their home unnoticed. If Giuseppe's suspicions are proven correct, we will not hesitate to act. We will end this threat, no matter how dire it becomes. If Victor and his family are indeed what Giuseppe claims, it could mean the difference between life and death for the people of Mystic Falls. The Founders, Council will protect this town at any cost, even if it means challenging the Mikaelsons, a family we once thought of as allies. Giuseppe's determination is unmatched, but I fear his obsession with this hunt may lead us into dangerous territory. Still, we must see this through, for the sake of Mystic Falls and its future. Date: September 19, 1864. What unfolded tonight was far beyond what any of us could have imagined. William had successfully infiltrated the Mikaelsons, estate while Giuseppe approached Victor directly. What he found confirmed our worst fears. Stefan and Damon, Giuseppe's own sons, were feeding on human blood, watched over by Victor and Freya. The sight shattered any doubts we might have held. The Salvatore brothers have indeed become vampires, and they are under the protection of the Mikaelsons. The moment Giuseppe witnessed this abomination, he was overcome with fury, vowing to destroy the creatures that his sons had become. In his blind rage, he aimed his musket at Stefan, ready to kill him. But before the shot could reach its target, Freya, with abilities unlike anything I've ever seen, intervened. She destroyed the bullet in midair, and not with any weapon. She used magic, conjuring power with her hands, deflecting the bullet and making it vanish into dust. This was no vampire trick. Freya is something far worse than a vampire, something far more powerful. Giuseppe, enraged and terrified, turned his weapon on her next, only to meet the same result. His attacks were useless against her. Then, in a chilling display, Freya conjured fire from thin air, using it to burn the corpses that had already fallen victim to Damon's hunger. The message was clear: she is not to be trifled with. It was then that the Mikaelsons made their position known. Victor, as calm as ever, addressed Giuseppe with cold calculation. He had no intention of hiding what they were any longer. Victor handed his young daughter, Malia, to a woman named Ketsia, his wife, someone who had arrived without any of us realizing. She, too, bore a power unlike anything I had seen before. As we gathered our forces to attack the Mikaelsons, it became clear that our efforts would be in vain. They are no ordinary vampires, and they have allies we know nothing about. Giuseppe's rage blinded him to the sheer magnitude of the situation. His instincts were correct about the Mikaelsons, but we are woefully unprepared for the battle ahead. Michael himself arrived shortly after, his presence as commanding as ever. He and his wife Esther now stand united with their children, facing off against Giuseppe and the rest of us. Despite the sheer numbers on our side, I cannot shake the feeling that we are walking into a slaughter. This night will be the turning point for Mystic Falls. Whether it ends in victory or utter ruin, I cannot say. I only hope the Founders are prepared for what they've unleashed. Present day, Gilbert Grayson's hands trembled as he turned the final page of the journal. His mind reeled with the implications of what he'd just read. The journal, written by his ancestor Jonathan Gilbert, detailed events that had been kept secret for generations. The confrontation with the Mikaelsons, the truth about vampires, and now, with the Salvatore brothers back in Mystic Falls, history seemed to be repeating itself. He couldn't deny it any longer. His town was once again at the mercy of vampires, just as it had been in the days of his ancestors. And now, with Damon and Stefan coming to his doorstep, the weight of Jonathan's words pressed heavily on his shoulders. They're vampires, they all are, Grayson muttered, the journal slipping from his trembling fingers as a cold realization gripped him. The sound of a knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts, and within moments, the Salvatore brothers entered his home. The storm of history was coming for Mystic Falls once again. Chapter 96. Stopping Stefan, they're vampires, they all are. Grayson's voice barely rose above a whisper, but the weight behind his words was palpable. Miranda, who had just stepped into the room, froze. She had caught the tremor in his voice, something that was so unlike him, and it made her uneasy. Her brow furrowed in confusion as she looked at her husband, standing rigidly by the window with his back to her. The dim light filtering through the curtains cast long shadows across the room, accentuating the tense atmosphere that clung to the air. What are you talking about, Grayson? Miranda asked, her voice soft, laced with concern. She took a tentative step forward, noticing the way his shoulders were hunched, as if weighed down by an invisible burden. And why do you look like that? What's wrong? Grayson turned slowly to face her, his eyes wide and frantic. He looked like a man who had just seen something that shattered his entire reality. His lips parted, but no sound came out for a moment, as if he couldn't quite find the words. His face was pale, and sweat dotted his brow. The journal that had slipped from his hands moments ago lay forgotten at his feet. We have to leave, Miranda, he finally said, his voice barely steady. His eyes darted around the room, as if he were being watched, or worse, hunted. We have to get out of Mystic Falls. Get the kids, we're leaving. Miranda blinked, trying to process what she was hearing. Her heart skipped a beat as confusion clouded her thoughts. Leave Mystic Falls. Just like that. Grayson, what are you? She stopped herself, realizing she wouldn't get any clear answers from him in his current state. His expression was wild, desperate, and something told her that pushing him right now would only make things worse. Her fingers curled into fists at her sides, her nails pressing into her palms as she took a steadying breath. Okay, she murmured, trying to sound calm, though she didn't understand. What had him so rattled? She decided to switch focus, thinking perhaps that grounding him in the present would help. The Salvatore brothers, Damon and Stefan. They're outside. They're looking for you. As soon as the names left her lips, she saw it, a flicker of something dark in Grayson's eyes. It was more than fear, it was a deep, visceral dread. His jaw clenched so tightly she could see the muscle twitch beneath his skin. He recoiled slightly, as if the mention of Damon and Stefan physically hurt him. She hesitated, watching his reaction with growing unease. Did you hear me? She asked, her voice softer now, as if afraid to push him too hard. He didn't answer, didn't even blink. His gaze had grown distant, locked onto something far beyond the room they were in, far beyond her. It was like he was already gone, lost in the terror that gripped him. His breathing had quickened, shallow and erratic, his hands shaking by his sides. Miranda stood there for a moment longer, her heart hammering in her chest. She knew Grayson well. He was not the type to scare easily, let alone lose himself to it. But whatever he had discovered, whatever he had seen or read in that journal, it had broken something inside him. Without another word, she turned away, leaving him standing there. She could feel his panic, his fear gnawing at the edges of her own calm. But she needed to stay grounded, to figure out what was happening. Maybe once he had calmed down, she could make sense of all this. Right now, though, she had to confront the Salvatore brothers. He'll be with you in a moment, Miranda said, descending the staircase with practiced grace, her face a mask of calm despite the storm brewing inside her. Damon looked up from where he lounged casually on the couch, flashing her a charming, but knowing smile. Okay, and while you're at it, could I trouble you for something to drink? My throat's a bit dry. His voice was smooth, yet there was something sly hidden behind his polite request, his piercing eyes never quite leaving hers. Miranda forced a smile, nodding. Of course. Please, make yourselves at home, she replied, though her words felt distant, her mind clearly elsewhere. She quickly turned on her heel and headed to the kitchen, her footsteps soft but hurried. As soon as she disappeared around the corner, Stefan shifted in his seat. His gaze flickered toward the stairs, and in one fluid motion, he stood up. His movements were quiet, almost too quiet, as if he were trying to avoid attracting attention. He glanced toward Damon, who was still reclining with a lazy smirk on his face, seemingly unconcerned with his brother's sudden restlessness. But before Stefan could even take a step toward the staircase, a blur of motion appeared before him, and suddenly Henrik stood in his path. His arrival was so swift, it sent a gust of wind rippling through the room. Henrik's eyes, usually calm and measured, were sharp and glowing with power. Stand down, Henrik said, his voice low, but commanding, like a distant rumble of thunder. He didn't raise his voice, but the authority behind it was enough to freeze Stefan in place. Don't even think about doing what you intend to do. Stefan blinked, his brows furrowing in surprise. He hadn't even heard Henrik approach, and now he was standing directly in front of him, blocking his path. His jaw tightened in frustration, but he said nothing. From the other side of the room, Elena and Margaret, who had been engaged in a quiet conversation with Henrik moments ago, suddenly felt the shift in the air. Elena glanced over, her expression shifting from mild curiosity to concern when she realized Henrik was no longer with them. She turned toward the source of his voice and saw him standing between Stefan and the staircase, a tension she hadn't noticed before now filling the room. "What's going on?" Elena asked, stepping forward hesitantly, her eyes flicking between Stefan and Henrik. Meanwhile, Margaret remained seated, her legs crossed, watching the unfolding scene with a glint of interest in her eyes. Unlike Elena, she seemed entirely unfazed by the sudden shift in the atmosphere. Her lips curled into a faint smile as she leaned back in her chair, her gaze never leaving Henrik and Stefan. She wasn't going to interfere. This was far too entertaining to interrupt. Stefan clenched his fists, his posture stiffening as he took a step back, forced to reconsider his plan. He wasn't reckless enough to challenge Henrik outright. Henrik didn't move, his gaze unwavering as he stared down Stefan. His presence alone seemed to command the room, like a predator watching its prey with cold, calculated patience. "Go no further, or you won't like what happens next," he warned, his voice smooth, but with a dangerous edge. Elena let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding, her shoulders relaxing slightly as she approached Henrik. "What was that all about?" she asked softly, her eyes still darting between him and Stefan. Henrik's face softened slightly as he glanced at Elena, but the underlying tension in the room still lingered. "Just making sure everyone stays where they're supposed to be," he replied cryptically, before turning his attention back to Stefan, his gaze a silent warning that the matter wasn't entirely over yet. "Sorry to keep you waiting, gentlemen." Chapter 97. Stefan wouldn't. The tension in the room hadn't entirely dissipated as Miranda returned, carrying a tray with 2 glasses of iced tea. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried her best to steady them, forcing a polite smile onto her face as she approached Damon and Stefan. "Sorry to keep you waiting, gentlemen," she said, setting the tray down on the coffee table in front of them. Her voice carried a strained warmth, the kind that comes with someone determined to maintain composure despite the unease bubbling beneath the surface. Damon, ever the charmer, offered her a gracious smile as he reached for one of the glasses. He swirled the liquid thoughtfully before taking a small sip, his eyes never leaving Miranda's. "Much appreciated, Miranda," he said smoothly, though there was a distinct undercurrent of mischief in his tone. Stefan, however, remained standing, his expression more serious. His sharp gaze tracked every subtle movement in the room, finally landing on Grayson as he descended the stairs. Grayson's face was still pale, but his jaw was set with determination, his earlier panic now hidden behind a mask of resolve. He hesitated when he saw Stefan, but Damon's calm demeanor seemed to ease some of the tension. Damon rose from his seat with an almost lazy elegance, placing the glass back onto the tray with a soft clink. "Grayson," he greeted, his voice light but with an edge of knowing. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, intricately carved box. It was old, its wood dark and polished with age, and the faint scent of cedar wafted into the room as he held it up. "This," Damon continued, taking a deliberate step forward and handing the box to Grayson, "is the final piece. Straight from Pearl." Grayson's hand hovered for a moment, his eyes flickering with uncertainty as he glanced between Damon and the box. Finally, he took it, the weight of it feeling heavier than it should have been. His fingers brushed against the smooth surface as he opened it, revealing a small, antique key nestled inside. His breath hitched almost imperceptibly as he stared at it, realization dawning in his eyes. Stefan stepped closer, his presence more commanding now. His posture was rigid, and though he said nothing, the intensity of his gaze spoke volumes. His eyes bore into Grayson's, a silent warning etched within them. It was as if he were telling him, "Don't make a mistake with this. Don't forget who gave it to you." Grayson swallowed hard, his throat bobbing visibly as he nodded. His voice came out hoarse, almost a whisper. "Thank you." Damon tilted his head slightly, his lips curving into a faint smirk. "Don't mention it," he said, his tone almost mocking, though there was an undercurrent of sincerity in his words. He turned toward Stefan, clapping him lightly on the shoulder. "Time to go, brother." Stefan lingered for a moment, his eyes narrowing just slightly as they met Grayson's. His jaw tightened, and his lips pressed into a thin line before he turned on his heel and followed Damon toward the door. As they reached the threshold, Damon paused and glanced back over his shoulder, his grin widening. "Oh, and Grayson," he called out, his voice dripping with nonchalance. "Try not to lose it this time. It's not like we can just pick up another one at the store." With that, he strolled out into the fading light, Stefan close behind him. Grayson stood frozen for a moment, the box still clutched tightly in his hands. Miranda stepped closer, her brows knitting in concern as she placed a tentative hand on his arm. "Grayson, what's going on?" she asked softly. But he didn't answer, his eyes fixed on the key as if it held answers to questions he wasn't ready to face. His shoulders sagged slightly, and a faint shiver ran through him. Whatever had just transpired, Miranda could tell it was only the beginning of something much larger. Outside, Damon and Stefan walked in silence for a few moments, the evening air cool against their skin. Finally, Stefan broke the quiet, his voice low and sharp. "Do you think he'll figure it out in time?" Damon chuckled softly, his hands slipping into his pockets. "If he doesn't, that's his problem. We've done our part." His smile faded slightly, and his expression grew distant, his usual playful air giving way to something far more serious. "But let's just hope he makes the right choice, for everyone's sake." Stefan said nothing, his jaw tightening as he cast a lingering glance back toward the house before the brothers disappeared into the shadows of the night. Back at the Gilbert house, Elena's brow furrowed as she leaned against the porch railing, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The soft glow of the porch light highlighted the worry etched across her face, her usually warm hazel eyes clouded with concern. She hadn't missed the charged atmosphere in the house or the pointed exchange between Henrik and Stefan before he left with Damon. Her gaze flicked toward Henrik, who stood a few feet away, his tall frame bathed in the dim light. He was tense, his posture rigid as he stared off into the darkened yard. His jaw was tight, and his hands hung loosely at his sides, though his fingers twitched occasionally, betraying the storm of thoughts raging in his mind. "What happened, Henrik?" Elena asked finally, her voice soft but insistent. She took a step closer, her eyes searching his face. "Why did you confront Stefan like that? What aren't you telling me?" Henrik sighed deeply, running a hand through his tousled hair. His shoulders slumped slightly as if the weight of the question was too much to bear. He hesitated, his lips parting and closing again, the struggle evident in the flicker of doubt that crossed his features. Finally, he turned to face her fully, his expression shadowed with worry. "Grayson found out," he said, his voice low and steady, though there was an edge of frustration simmering beneath his words. "He knows about us, about what we are." Elena's breath caught in her throat, her arms dropping to her sides. Her heart pounded as she stared at Henrik, disbelief mingling with a rising tide of fear. "He knows they're vampires?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Henrik nodded, his jaw tightening. "And Stefan, he wanted to take care of him." His voice darkened, and a flash of anger lit his eyes. "He thought it would be better to eliminate the problem before it escalated." Elena's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide. "No," she murmured, shaking her head as if denying the very possibility could make it untrue. "Stefan wouldn't." Yes, he wouldn't, but look at the greater picture. If Grayson was to rat them out to the council, then there is going to be another bloodbath in Mystic Falls, and nobody wants that. Miranda said, which surprisingly was what Henrik was about to say. Chapter 98. Putting the pieces together. As the door to the Mikaelson mansion creaked open, Stefan and Damon stepped inside, their boots making soft thuds against the polished hardwood floor. The grand interior was dimly lit, the chandeliers casting a warm glow that flickered faintly, mirroring the tension etched on their faces. Damon moved with his usual swagger, his hands slipping casually into his leather jacket pockets. His expression was unreadable at first glance, but his eyes glimmered with a faint mix of triumph and weariness. He glanced at Stefan, whose posture was noticeably stiff, his movements calculated and purposeful, as though he were steeling himself for the conversation ahead. At the far end of the lavish sitting room, Viktor Mikaelson stood near a roaring fireplace, his tall frame silhouetted against the flames. The Mikaelson brother exuded an air of authority, his piercing blue eyes glinting as they met Damon and Stefan's. His lips curled into a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You've returned," Viktor said, his deep voice resonating through the room. He turned slightly, his tailored suit catching the light as he gestured for them to approach. Damon was the first to break the silence, his smirk forming with practiced ease. "Mission accomplished," he drawled, withdrawing his hands from his pockets and spreading them out theatrically. Grayson has the last piece. We even gift-wrapped it for him. Victor's smile widened fractionally as he nodded, the movement slow and deliberate. You've done well, he said, his tone calm yet laced with a subtle undercurrent of approval. His gaze shifted to Stefan, studying the younger Salvatore intently. Stefan returned the look, his jaw tightening. His shoulders were taut, and though he remained silent, his clenched fists betrayed his unease. He wasn't here to bask in Victor's praise, and the flicker of doubt in his eyes spoke volumes. You don't seem pleased, Stefan, Victor remarked, arching a brow. He stepped closer, his movements graceful yet imposing. Is there something troubling you? Damon let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head as he moved to pour himself a glass of bourbon from a nearby decanter. Oh, don't mind him. He's just upset that we had to play delivery boys. He raised the glass in a mock toast before taking a sip, his expression briefly darkening. It's not that, Stefan said, his voice steady but tinged with frustration. He met Victor's gaze, his green eyes sharp. It's Grayson. You're putting a lot of trust in him to handle this responsibly. Victor's smile faded slightly, and his head tilted in a gesture of measured patience. Grayson understands what's at stake, he said, his voice firm. And now, he has everything he needs. If he chooses poorly, Victor's lips pressed into a thin line, his expression hardening. Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. Stefan's shoulders sagged just a fraction, a shadow of resignation crossing his features. Damon, meanwhile, downed the rest of his bourbon and set the glass down with a loud clink. Well, on that cheerful note, Damon said, flashing a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes, our job here is done. Unless you've got another wild goose chase for us. Victor chuckled softly, the sound low and almost mocking. No, Damon, you've done your part. You're free to go. Damon clapped Stefan on the shoulder as he turned toward the door. Come on, brother, let's leave the scheming to the professionals. Stefan hesitated for a moment, his gaze lingering on Victor. The eldest Mikaelson's expression remained composed, but there was an unmistakable weight in his eyes, a quiet warning that left no room for doubt. Finally, Stefan turned and followed Damon, his footsteps heavy against the floor. In the dim solitude of his study, Grayson Gilbert sat hunched over his desk, the faint light of a desk lamp casting long, wavering shadows across the room. The antique key Damon had given him lay before him, its intricate details glinting faintly under the light. Beside it were the other fragments he had painstakingly gathered over months, pieces of wood, metal, and stone, all bearing the same strange carvings and runes. Grayson's hands trembled as he reached for the key, his breath shallow and uneven. His usually composed demeanor had given way to an uncharacteristic restlessness, his brows furrowed and lips pressed into a tight line. He knew this was more than just an artifact. It was a puzzle, one that carried a weight far greater than he could fully understand. He inhaled deeply, trying to steady himself, before picking up the first piece of the fragmented object. The cold, worn surface of the artifact felt heavy in his hands, as though it carried centuries of secrets. His fingers traced the grooves instinctively, his mind working through the intricate patterns and symbols. With a deliberate slowness, he pressed the key into a slot on the largest fragment. It fit perfectly, sliding in with a faint, almost imperceptible click. Grayson exhaled sharply, his shoulders relaxing for a moment before he leaned forward again, scrutinizing the remaining pieces. The process was methodical, almost ritualistic. He worked in silence, his movements precise despite the tension radiating from him. Each piece clicked into place with a soft, satisfying sound, forming a structure that began to resemble a larger object, a circular contraption, ancient and foreboding. As the last piece neared completion, Grayson paused, his hands hovering above it. His jaw clenched, and a bead of sweat rolled down his temple. For a brief moment, doubt clouded his expression. What am I doing? What will this unlock? But then, the memory of Damon's smirk and Stefan's intense stare returned to him, hardening his resolve. With a final push, he connected the last fragment. The completed object glowed faintly for a split second before settling into an ominous stillness. Grayson leaned back in his chair, his chest heaving as though he'd been holding his breath the entire time. His eyes, wide with a mix of awe and dread, fixated on the artifact now sitting on the desk. The device was intricate and almost otherworldly. Runes etched across its surface seemed to shift subtly in the dim light, creating an unsettling effect. Grayson's fingers twitched, as though tempted to reach for it, but he hesitated. His mind raced with questions. What had he just unleashed? What did this thing do? The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint creak of his chair as he shifted uneasily. His face betrayed a storm of emotions: curiosity, fear, determination. Finally, with trembling hands, he reached out and picked up the device, cradling it as though it were a fragile relic. His grip tightened, and his expression hardened into one of resolve. No turning back. Now, he muttered to himself, his voice barely audible. His gaze flicked toward the doorway, his ears straining for any sound beyond the quiet hum of the house. But there was nothing. No Miranda, no Elena, no Jeremy. Just him and the weight of his decision. Grayson set the device down carefully and leaned forward again, his hands pressing against the desk as he stared at it. The room seemed to grow colder, the shadows deepening as though the artifact itself were drawing the light away. His breath misted faintly in the air, but he didn't flinch. He closed his eyes, his brow furrowing deeply. "If this is the only way," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "If this is what it takes to protect them," his words trailed off, swallowed by the oppressive silence. Grayson's shoulders sagged slightly, and for a moment, he seemed so small, just a man burdened by choices too heavy for one person to bear. Then, as if summoned by some unseen force, the artifact began to hum softly, its runes glowing faintly once more. Grayson's eyes snapped open, and though fear flickered in their depths, there was also a glint of determination. He leaned closer, his reflection staring back at him from the artifact's polished surface, and whispered, "Let's see what you're hiding." Chapter 99 Killing the Tomb Vampires. One Grayson stood before the council in the opulent parlor of the Lockwood estate, the completed artifact resting on the large oak table at the center of the room. The council members, Mayor Lockwood, Carol Lockwood, Sheriff Forbes, and a few other prominent figures of Mystic Falls, sat in a semicircle, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and thinly veiled tension. The air was heavy with anticipation as Grayson began his presentation, his voice calm but underpinned by a faint tremor. "This device," he said, gesturing toward the artifact, "is our answer. It's ancient, yes, but it's powerful. It's been designed to neutralize vampires en masse." The council members leaned in slightly, their eyes locked on the artifact. Mayor Lockwood's brow furrowed, his lips pressing into a tight line as though trying to gauge the full weight of Grayson's words. Carol's expression was carefully neutral, but her hands gripped the armrests of her chair tightly. Sheriff Forbes, always pragmatic, leaned forward with her elbows on her knees, her sharp eyes darting between Grayson and the device. "It looks delicate," one of the council members remarked, his tone laced with doubt. He gestured at the intricate carvings and glowing runes. "Are we supposed to believe that this little thing can handle all the tomb vampires at once?" Grayson straightened, his shoulders squaring. The doubt stung, but he swallowed his frustration and forced his voice to remain steady. "I've tested its components. Each piece works exactly as intended. Together, they create a powerful burst of energy specifically designed to incapacitate vampires. If we can gather them in one place, the device will do the rest." The room fell into a tense silence. The weight of the plan was palpable, and each council member's face betrayed a mix of hope and apprehension. Mayor Lockwood exchanged a glance with his wife, his lips tightening as he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "So, the next question," Victor interjected smoothly, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. He stepped out of the shadows near the fireplace, where he had been observing the proceedings with a cool, detached air. "How do we gather them? Vampires from the tomb aren't exactly trusting." The council's attention shifted to Victor. His tall frame was as commanding as ever, his piercing blue eyes flickering with a dangerous intensity. His lips curved into a faint smile, but it was a calculated expression, measured and deliberate. He radiated confidence, yet there was a subtle edge of amusement, as though he found the entire situation mildly entertaining. Grayson frowned slightly, his fingers twitching as he resisted the urge to cross his arms defensively. "We need bait," he admitted, his voice low. "Something that would lure them out of hiding." Victor took a step closer to the table, his movements fluid and almost predatory. "What better bait than the founding families themselves?" he suggested, his tone light but laced with undeniable authority. A grand fundraiser. A public event, full of laughter, dancing, and indulgence. It's exactly the sort of thing to draw their attention. The council exchanged wary glances. Carol Lockwood's lips parted slightly as though she wanted to protest, but she hesitated, her gaze flickering to her husband. Sheriff Forbes sat back in her chair, crossing her arms as she regarded Victor with an unreadable expression. The idea was bold, dangerous even, but it carried a certain logic that was hard to deny. Grayson's jaw clenched. You want to use innocent people as bait. Victor's smile widened, though it didn't reach his eyes. The tomb vampires harbor a deep grudge against the founding families. If we ensure they believe the event is an opportunity for revenge, they'll come willingly. And when they do, his gaze flicked to the artifact, his smile sharpening. We'll be ready. Mayor Lockwood nodded slowly, his expression grim. It's risky, but it might work. Sheriff Forbes exhaled sharply, her jaw tightening. We'll need to control every aspect of the event. Security, escape routes, contingencies, everything. Of course, Victor said smoothly, his tone almost dismissive. He moved to the edge of the room, pouring himself a drink from the decanter on the sideboard. His movements were slow, deliberate, his expression calm but unreadable. This plan requires precision. A single misstep, and we risk more than just failure. Carol Lockwood finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. If we do this, we're all in. There's no room for hesitation. The council murmured in agreement, their collective resolve hardening. Grayson, still uneasy, ran a hand through his hair and sighed heavily. His shoulders sagged slightly as the weight of the plan settled on him, but he nodded. Then we start preparations immediately, he said, his voice firm despite the doubt flickering in his eyes. Victor raised his glass in a mock toast, his smile as sharp as ever. To the success of our little soiree. His gaze lingered on Grayson for a moment, a silent challenge flickering in his piercing blue eyes. Grayson stared back, his expression hardening. He knew Victor's suggestion was the best chance they had, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the Mikaelson brother had his own motives. Still, there was no turning back now. The council members rose one by one, their movements stiff but purposeful. Each of them bore the weight of their decision in their expressions, Carol's quiet determination, the sheriff's steely focus, the mayor's grim resolve. Grayson remained seated for a moment longer, his hands resting heavily on the table as he stared at the artifact. Victor watched him with an amused smirk before draining his glass and setting it down with a soft clink. Don't look so troubled, Drive. Gilbert, he said, his voice low and almost mocking. This is just the beginning. Grayson's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. He simply stood, his movements slow and deliberate, and followed the others out of the room. Chapter 100 Killing the Tomb Vampires 2. As the council filed out of the room, the tension clung to the air like a suffocating fog. Grayson trailed behind the others, his shoulders stiff and his hands clenched at his sides. His mind raced with a mix of determination and unease. This plan was dangerous, morally questionable, and yet, he couldn't deny its potential for success. Mayor Lockwood paused at the door, his hand resting on the polished brass handle as he glanced back at Grayson. His face was a mask of stoicism, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. We'll meet tomorrow to finalize the details, he said, his voice gruff but laced with a hint of weariness. Grayson nodded tightly, his jaw clenching as he watched the mayor leave. He turned back to the room, his gaze falling on the artifact still sitting on the table. The runes etched into its surface pulsed faintly, casting a ghostly glow that seemed to mock his uncertainty. From the corner of the room, Victor's voice broke the silence. Second thoughts, Drive. Gilbert. Grayson turned sharply, his eyes narrowing as he met Victor's gaze. The Mikaelson brother leaned casually against the ornate fireplace, the dim light casting sharp shadows across his angular features. He swirled the remnants of his drink in his glass, his expression unreadable but for the faint, ever-present smirk tugging at his lips. None that concern you, Grayson said evenly, though the edge in his voice was unmistakable. He moved back to the table, his fingers brushing over the artifact as though seeking reassurance from its cold, unyielding surface. Victor's smirk deepened, and he straightened, the movement fluid and predatory. Good. Because hesitation is a luxury we can't afford. If you falter, the consequences won't just fall on you. Grayson's eyes flashed, his temper flaring. I know what's at stake, he snapped, his voice low but heated. You don't need to remind me. Victor stepped closer, his presence almost overwhelming despite the calm in his demeanor. He tilted his head slightly, studying Grayson with an intensity that made the doctor's skin prickle. Good, he said softly, his tone carrying a dangerous undertone. Because the vampires won't hesitate. Neither should we. Grayson exhaled sharply, the tension in his chest threatening to suffocate him. He turned away, his hand gripping the back of a chair as he tried to steady himself. Victor's words were calculated, designed to unnerve him, and they were working. Victor watched him for a moment longer before turning away, his movements as graceful as ever. He set his empty glass on the sideboard with a soft clink, then adjusted the cuffs of his tailored jacket with deliberate precision. Get some rest, drive. Gilbert, he said over his shoulder, his tone almost dismissive. Tomorrow, the real work begins. Without waiting for a response, Victor strode toward the door, his posture radiating unshakable confidence. Grayson's gaze followed him, his jaw tightening as a wave of frustration and resentment bubbled to the surface. Victor had a way of making him feel like a pawn in a game he barely understood, and it grated on him more than he cared to admit. The door closed behind Victor with a soft click, leaving Grayson alone in the room. He stared at the artifact for a long moment, his thoughts a chaotic swirl of doubts and determination. The council was counting on him. Mystic Falls was counting on him. He couldn't afford to fail. Grayson straightened, his expression hardening as resolve replaced his uncertainty. He had no choice but to see this plan through, no matter the cost. With one last glance at the artifact, he turned and left the room, his steps echoing in the empty halls. The following day, preparations began in earnest. The Lockwood estate buzzed with activity as staff moved about, setting up for the fundraiser. Elegant decorations adorned the grand ballroom, and a sense of urgency hung in the air. The council worked tirelessly behind the scenes, their expressions tense as they reviewed every detail of the plan. Carol Lockwood oversaw the arrangements with meticulous precision, her calm demeanor masking the turmoil beneath the surface. She moved with purpose, issuing instructions to the staff while casting occasional glances at the other council members. Her fingers fidgeted with the delicate clasp of her necklace, a subtle tell of her unease. Sheriff Forbes stood near the entrance, her sharp eyes scanning the room as she spoke in hushed tones with her deputies. Her posture was rigid, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Every so often, her gaze would drift to the artifact, now hidden in a secure case, as though silently willing it to work. Grayson worked alongside them, his movements brisk and focused. His face was pale, the dark circles under his eyes a testament to a sleepless night. He barely spoke, his mind consumed with thoughts of the device and the weight of his responsibilities. Victor, as always, remained on the periphery, watching the proceedings with an air of detached amusement. He leaned against a column, his arms crossed and his piercing blue eyes taking in every detail. His presence was both reassuring and unnerving, a constant reminder of the stakes they faced. As the sun set and the first guests began to arrive, the tension in the air reached a fever pitch. The council members exchanged tense glances, their expressions a mix of determination and fear. This was it, the moment of truth.
Another tale fades into the silence. But here, in the fantasy audiobook library, stories never sleep. Subscribe and return when your heart seeks adventure. We'll be waiting.